social distancing at its finest.
He's signed up already. Yeah. All right. Good evening. It is 6 o'clock on December 14th, and I call this regularly scheduled Dunwoody City Council meeting to order. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the meeting is called to order. We are all here. Councilwoman Harris is joining us by Zoom in our hybrid meeting. Councilman Reiteicher, can you lead us in the invocation and the pledge, please?
I will be glad to. At this meeting, help us to make decisions which keep us faithful to our mission and reflect our values. Give us strength to hold to our purpose, wisdom to guide us, and a keen perception to lead us. And above all, keep us charitable as we deliberate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me check upstairs. I don't know who to check with to make sure the sound is working. Eric said yes. Okay. Okay, good. All right. Public comments. If anyone here wants to make a comment, the cards are in the center. Ginger, do you want to kick us off, please?
I do not show either of our previously listed people in the meeting right this second, but if anybody would like to speak in public comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom application.
They are, Ryan is here, so we
Okay.
can go with him. And then if you could remind me of the second person's name as well.
Jeff Gromatsky, and I apologize if I said that incorrectly.
I don't think he's here. So, all right, Ryan, would you like to have your 3 minutes, please? Ginger, you're going to keep time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor.
You have to keep your microphone on and just speak into the microphone, please. Your mask on.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Mhm.
The redevelopment of the site, or proposed redevelopment of the site that you'll be hearing later today in today's presentation at the library property. I do have some concern as a neighboring resident and landowner there. I would assume that my neighbors would as well. Some of those proposed redevelopment call for 2, potentially 3-story parking, which abuts right to the near backside of my property, as well as other residents that may have lights shining in on the windows and things like that. That's one concern from an aesthetic standpoint of, I do realize it's zoned for DV3 with the new overlay, but I think our kind of side of the block over there was kind of forgotten about in that whole process. So the other thing that I wanted to make sure that would occur would be that this kind of redevelopment would be done in tandem with the proposed intersection improvement at Womack and Champlain Dunwoody. And when I was here in October, someone had mentioned that it would be nice to have more of a pedestrian-friendly kind of walk upward and things like that. I didn't see that any in the proposed designs. In fact, I actually saw more of an entrance and exit for vehicles to come off of Womack, which I think would be, quite frankly, a little, on par with how it's set up now, if not worse, from a safety perspective. So just want everyone to be mindful of our concerns there, and that there is a new zoning. It would require a special land use permit, as it would be within 200 feet of my property line, as well as other residents. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ginger. Go ahead.
If anyone else would like to speak during public comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom app. I see no hands raised at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Shortall, please. You're next. You're kind of it.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Just came over here. Sorry about my appearance, but I'm trying to learn to play golf, and I'm playing marine golf. That's why I got blood all over my trousers here. I just came over, wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and thank you for serving. But I do have one request. I sent you all an email about 3-4 weeks ago. You know, we keep our city looking great. That's why people want to live here. But if you drive down Mount Vernon or Tilly Mill and go into the power line, you'll see weeds as high as my head right here. I think, you know, we could scrape up a few bucks and get those cut down. I think would kind of enhance the appearance of our whole city across the spectrum. So again, thanks for serving. Take care of yourself. And I hope you get everything you need underneath the tree or wherever you're at, or the Hanukkah bush. And peace.
Thank you. All right. Now we have public hearings.
Mayor, I'll read the resolution caption for item number 2 for the public hearing. A resolution to adopt the City of Dunwoody Comprehensive Plan 2020 through 2040 5-year update.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we're introducing the final draft of the comprehensive plan. It did go to ARC and DCA for review, and they got it back to us fairly quick. So I'll turn it over to Eric Osman, and he's going to go through the points that we amended.
Great. Thank you, Richard, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Just very briefly, we're going to highlight just the process of the comprehensive plan that you saw a couple of months ago, and then highlight just a couple of the changes based on council input, as well as the sole comment that we received from the Department of Community Affairs from their review. So as you may remember, this process actually kicked off a little over a year ago with a kickoff meeting in front of City Council on October 28th. We then began the process, a combination of sounding board meetings and in-person community involvement to begin with, that then quickly changed to virtual public involvement during the middle half of this year. We came to City Council back in September for review, initial review of the comprehensive plan, and then submitted it to both the Department of Community Affairs and the Atlanta Regional Commission for their standard review, and back to you this evening for the adoption process. The document itself is fairly lengthy. It is a policy document that is meant to provide overall guidance to the city, mostly related to growth and development over the next 5 to 10 years. It includes a revised citywide vision statement, a list of updated community goals. It outlines a series of policies and action items related to those community goals. It looks at needs and opportunities, and then ultimately culminates in the community work program, which is the action plan for the next 5 years. And it's intended both to guide some staff actions as well as potential investments as you review your fiscal budget and your priorities on an annual basis. Now, there are 2 very important maps that are included in the comprehensive plan. One is the community, the character area map, which is on the screen now, that shows the bulk of our community, which is a residential area, along with those character areas that are slightly different, including Perimeter Center, Dunwoody Village, the Georgetown area, the 285 Peachtree Gateway, the institutional campus character area in the center of the city, which includes the university, the college, as well as the Jewish Community Center and other institutional uses, the Mount Vernon East area in the north part of the city, and Winters Chapel. This map has been amended from the naming standpoint to now make sure that it is fully consistent with the plan. And I think the 2 other pieces we really talked about back in September were to make sure that the Dunwoody Village character area does reflect the now adopted master plan that has gone through the process. And just to highlight again, the 285 Peachtree Gateway area along 285 and North Peachtree Road was expanded to include the First Baptist Church property that is north of Cotillion and south of Peachford Road, so that if and when the city does a study of that 285 Peachtree Gateway area, that all of those major properties along the 285 frontage are included in that effort. Whether that means any change to the church or not is to be determined by the plan, but we wanted to make sure that the church property as a significant property owner wouldn't get left out of that process. So that's the reason that they were brought into the 285 Peachtree Gateway character area. The other important map, of course, is the future land use map. And what's different in this version from the version 5 years ago is the inclusion of an institutional classification as well as communications and utilities as a new classification in the future land use plan. Now, for the last rounds of changes, since the community had its last chance to comment through the online review and input portal, the sounding board met at the end of that process. There were some language tweaks related to preserving tree canopy and environmental measures, making sure that we're looking for greater housing variety and thinking about both affordability and aging in place, preserving green space, and highlighting connections to the city's trail system and to outdoor recreational opportunities. The other change that we made this fall, before this came to council before, but I think important to reiterate based on the community comment, was in most cases in the plan, we eliminated some vague references to suburban versus urban. That really became a point of great confusion and concern to the community. So we tried to eliminate that nomenclature and use more accurate descriptive characteristics within the plan rather than defaulting to suburban or urban, which is kind of different depending on the eye of the beholder. Then our last round of changes based on city council direction comment and the comment from DCA, we did change the language of goal number 1 to maintain and enhance residential amenities and housing types within neighborhoods. We added back in the universal design element into the community work program. That was inadvertently omitted and deleted from the first version. That has been replaced. We have fixed the character area map. We have reviewed the character areas for consistencies and opportunities related to aging in place so that they're treated equitably across the plan. And then the one comment that we received from the Department of Community Affairs was advice to make sure that we added a column to the community work program that shows which priority needs by number each of those work program elements are intended to address. And then with ARC's help, we did add some additional language to bring the broadband ready certification information up to snuff. So those are the changes that have been made both prior to you seeing it in September, and then this last slide, this last round of changes that we've made. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you have or address any comments, and look forward to how this plan will guide the city for years to come.
Sharon, do we have the open public hearing and all that for this?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, I will open, without objection, I will open the public hearing. Seeing none, I open the public hearing. So Ginger, are you ready on your end if we need to?
Yes,
Okay,
I'm ready.
So I'm going to start with 10 minutes in favor. If anybody wants to speak in favor of the comprehensive plan.
If anyone would like to speak please raise your hand in the Zoom application. I see no hands raised at this time.
Okay, anyone here want to speak in favor? Okay, seeing none, I will offer 10 minutes to anyone, a total of 10 minutes, if anyone would like to speak against the comprehensive plan. All right, I don't see anyone here. Ginger, can you check on your end, please?
Please raise your hand in the Zoom app. I see no hands raised at this time.
Okay, all right. So with that, I will close the public hearing. Unless there's an objection, seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Council comments and questions. John?
Eric, thank you for the presentation. If you can go back to that last page you had up, which showed the changes from, I guess, maybe the last meeting. And I want to make sure I understand what changed. Am I seeing items that are bolded, or is that just my eyes? You're on,
You're on mute.
but for example, is housing types, is that bolded, or is that just my imagination? On change one.
It is. We did bold some keywords in that slide to remind me to mention them.
Okay, and I'm just trying to remember in the residential area, changing the housing types. I'm just not, I'm sure we had conversations on it. I'm just not sure where that came from. Was that a DCA or the recommendation from the state? Where did that come from? Do you, any insight for me?
I believe that comment came from you, John.
Yeah, well, I got it. May have. I just want to make sure that I was really want to know what came back from the state.
Yeah, the only thing from the state was the fifth bullet to identify which priority needs related to which community work program items. So we added a column in the community work program that references which needs those align to.
Okay, so
that was the
real
only
change
comment
that
from the
came
state.
back from them. Everything else went through council previously.
Correct.
All right. And thank you for the universal design standards back in. I'm good with it. I have no other questions. I appreciate your efforts.
Anyone else?
Just have a question on the naming convention of neighborhood. It says suburban neighborhood. Are there sub definitions of different types of neighborhoods for residential?
I think it's a question, if you ask several people, you'll get several different answers on what that means.
Yeah, and
Right. So, yeah, go ahead, Eric. What do you have any thoughts?
And that term suburban neighborhood was the original term from the plan 5 years ago. Since this was a minor update, we only modified those things that needed to be modified. So that I agree, the term is left open to opinion by some folks, but that is the term that was in the plan and was the holdover from previously.
Right, but the in-state is still, the definition is the same. There's not been any changes in five years, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So I'm good with that. Thanks.
Anybody else? Tom?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Eric and Richard. I know a lot of work goes into this, and this is very important for because this shapes the future of the city and our zoning decisions. So I thank you. And then I have something that's a very, very minor point, but I just wanted to ask if it needs to be addressed. In the executive summary portion, item number 3, dealing with the right of ways, and we have all those like little bullet points in there. The art, the Public Art Commission that we're going to be looking to adopt later this evening specifically mentions using right-of-ways for artwork. And one of those columns lists public art. So should we put a bullet into the column with the right-of-ways for the public art, just to be consistent with the item that we'll be looking at later on tonight? Do you see where I'm talking about? I mean, it's a very minor issue, but just want to make sure that all our plans are consistent.
No, I think if council feels that that's appropriate, that's certainly something that could be part of the vote and could be a very easy edit.
And it would not require resending it.
But I think to keep all of our plans consistent, I just think that would be good. And I think it's a good opportunity to use the right of ways for art as well. So, and then the other question I have is, and Eric, you had mentioned this during your presentation, the Dunwoody Village overlay that we recently adopted. Is the map that's currently in the plan consistent with the map that we officially adopted? And will that present a problem if it's not?
Let me take it. It is not. It's inclusive of the entire village plan, but we're planning to go forward with that. It'll come out eventually, one way or the other.
So leaving the map as it's drawn shouldn't present any
I don't think
issues for us,
No.
especially if it comes to any zoning decisions or anything like
Right.
that.
And
Okay, I
we
just wanted to be sure of that.
could come back and update the plan if necessary.
Okay, that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Anybody else? So I want to circle back to what Tom was talking about, because I'm big on legally defensible. So if we leave the plan, the village plan in was proposed versus what's adopted, what's the process for eventually putting in what was adopted?
Well, this is the bird in the sky view.
Right.
Our zoning drives the decisions. So that would impact it heavier than the overall plan.
But can we amend the plan with the right map, or we don't need to? Or do y'all just do that internally? I wouldn't think that's right. Never mind.
Well, I don't think we need to, because we're planning to introduce that 2 parcels again. It'll may change it, but we don't know yet, so it's a little early to.
Right. No, I understand that. But
Right.
once we start the process with the two parcels, once that's completed, what's the next step in terms of the comprehensive plan?
If everything stays as is, it wouldn't change at all. If there's dramatic changes, we possibly would have to go back and amend the comprehensive plan.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, John.
Richard, is it possible to put one extra appendix, one piece of paper in there showing the current plan as it's approved today, with the intention of changing it back to the way it is as in the plan itself? The plan, what's in the plan right now is what's intended to hopefully happen. But as to be legally defensible, is there any way to put a caveat in the report and show the appendix as it is today? That would cover both sides, I guess, both intentions?
The plan isn't in the comprehensive plan. We just talked about it.
Okay.
So whatever it was, that turned out to be, is what it is. I would feel that way if the plan was wholesale mentioned in the comprehensive plan, but it isn't.
Yeah,
It's
but
just referred
the
to
map
as
is there
plan.
and the graphic is there and the graphic's incorrect. That's all. I just want to make sure that there's no unintended consequences.
I don't believe so. Eric, do you feel like there is?
I don't believe there are any unintended consequences. I can't think of any, but Councilmember Hennigan, is the map you're referring to specifically the map on page 25?
Probably. It's the one with the zoning changes that we made and the different layouts, right?
I mean, I do think we could potentially make it a little bit tighter if the map on page 25, rather than being that specific map, was just a map of the master plan area, to highlight the area that the master plan applies to versus a zoning map. I think that would make it a little tighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good solution.
That's a good solution. I agree.
Thank you. So do we need to amend are we voting on this tonight?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to make a motion to have the plan amended when we make the motion. Is that correct? As I look upstairs looking for advice. Bill, is that what we need to do?
Yes, I would make a motion to approve with the following amendments,
Okay,
and then add those amendments that you want on there. And then there'll be a second and you could vote on it one time.
okay. Thank you. All right, anybody have anything else? Okay, this is an action item.
Move to approve.
Move to approve
Second.
by John, second by Joe.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the document under figure 7, which is the Dunwoody Village Master Plan map with all of the zoning aspects. I'd like to revert that photo to the overall general village overlay without any detail.
John has made a motion to amend. That was moved by John. The amendment was made by John and seconded by Jim. Any further questions or discussion for each other or staff? All right, Stacy, I forgot.
She's there.
She's
Sort of there.
sort of there. She was there a second ago. So we need to vote on the amendment then first. All in favor of John's amendment to replace the map with a more general map of the village overlay, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that's unanimous. That's unanimous, Sharon. Now, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to just make an additional amendment
Okay.
to the executive summary portion, the chart, item number 3, which reads, the city's right-of-ways are assets to maintain and improve, and in the column for a goal to include a bullet point for cultivate and expand access to arts and culture to be consistent with, well, I guess I don't have to put that in, that's just the motion that's changed.
Right. We have a motion for an amendment to add the public arts language.
A
to the right
second.
of way. Moved by Tom, second, the amendment is moved by Tom, second by John. Any questions or discussion on that?
Can I actually see the page, Tom? What page number are you on, please? I want
Yeah,
to.
just close
It's
the line.
executives.
It was, I think it's Roman numeral 3 page in the executive summary. It's right in the beginning.
PDF 11.
At the first page of the chart.
Okay, so there's a chart.
I
It
think
has the
Joe
goals.
said it's
PDF page 11.
PDF page 11.
Yeah, 11. Yeah.
And it's what number across or down?
It's number 3. And then at the
Cities.
top of the chart, there are goals.
Okay.
And it's the
Check.
third to
Put a-
last
Yeah,
goal.
I'm
Put a
reading.
button, put a bullet,
Needs a dot.
needs a dot.
Yeah. It's the third goal from the, oh, this is hard, right and
All
left.
To the left.
I agree.
Right,
I'm
okay.
good. I just want to make sure I understand what I'm
Okay,
voting
make sure
on.
you can, I don't do right and left so well sometimes. All right, any further questions or comments? So now we're voting on Tom's amendment to add the dot on the executive summary about cultural arts in the right of way. Seeing no more discussion, I call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the amendment passes. Now we are on any other amendments. We are on to the amended original motion, which is to adopt the comprehensive plan with 2 amendments, one related to the map of the village overlay and one related to a dot in the executive summary about art in the right of way to be consistent with our arts plan. Any further discussion on the comprehensive plan? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I see you, Stacy. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a first read of an ordinance to amend the City of Dunwoody zoning classification and map for zoning conditions of lot parcel number 18-350-01009 and 18-350-01011 in consideration of zoning case RZ 20-04 for 301 and 303 Perimeter Center North, Dunwoody, Georgia.
All right, thank you, Mayor and City Council. Let me get this presentation up for you real fast.
And Richard, if you could just speak a little louder, please.
All right, yes, ma'am. Is that better?
That's better. Thank you.
All righty. All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm actually going to present RZ 20-04 and SLUP 20-01 together, as this is a rezoning that would allow the SLUP if approved. And as Sharon was saying, it's 301 and 303 Perimeter Center North. It's approximately 1.5 acres, and the current zoning is OCR conditional. The applicant's requesting to zone to PC2 to be in line with the city's comprehensive plan and future land use maps. And right here's an image of the area. You've got subject property is 301 Perimeter Center North, and that's a 187,000 square foot office building. And then just slightly northeast of that, you've got 303 Perimeter North, and that is 162,000 square foot of rentable office space. And there's also a 625 parking spaces in the parking deck that's 7 stories. That's also on the property. All right, and as you can see here on the perimeter center regulation map, our comprehensive plan does say that it should be from PC2 district in the regulating plan there. And the applicant on this one is asking for the SLUP to be a secondary educational use. And on that, they're saying that this will be off hours from most typical businesses in the area. They're looking at their peak hours being from 6 to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, with some Saturday morning classes as well. And on this, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning from OCRC to PC2. And staff is also recommending approval with conditions of the special land use permit to allow a secondary educational use with one condition. The secondary educational use shall be limited to 100,000 square feet between the two properties. All right, and with that, I turn it back over to you.
We'll have a public hearing on this
Hey,
item.
Eric Bosman with Kinley Horn.
Hey.
Sure.
Mayor, I'm sorry, for point of clarification, since these are being presented in tandem, I will need to read the SLUP ordinance caption into the record, please.
I don't think I knew that they were being presented in tandem. So
That's what Mr. Hathcock said.
Oh, okay. I just must have heard that. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just read that quickly.
Mhm.
So for the SLUP, it's an ordinance to amend the City of Dunwoody zoning map for zoning conditions of lot parcel number 18-350-01-009 and 18-350-01-011 in consideration of special land use permit 20-01 for 301 and 303 Perimeter Center North, Dunwoody, Georgia. Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask a quick question of the attorney? Since these both require public hearings, can we read them in tandem?
I'm sorry.
These both require public hearings, correct, Bill?
Yes.
Can we do them in tandem? Or do we, not that there's a ton of public here, but just in general, can we do these together, or are we supposed to do each one separate?
I think you can do them together.
Okay, that's fine.
And
Continue
Mayor,
on.
Mayor, the opposition is, excuse me, the applicant is online, ready to speak.
All right. So are we're not having a second presentation, right?
No, ma'am, that was all one presentation.
Okay, that's what I
together.
thought. Okay. All right. So now I open the public hearing, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there anyone who wants to speak? Oh, I need to open the public hearing without objection. Seeing no objection, the public hearing is opened. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? Ginger, can you check online?
If you would like to speak in favor, please raise your hand in the Zoom app.
I'm trying.
See no hands raised at this time.
Trying.
Excuse me.
Mayor Henry Bailey is the legal counsel for the applicant. He's trying to get his Zoom to work, but he would like to speak.
Yeah.
Okay.
This
Can
is
you
Henry
wait to see
Bailey.
if there's any questions? Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead and start. Ginger, you're going to keep time, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
This will be really brief. This is Henry Bailey, counsel for the applicant, Perimeter Sterling Properties, LLP. I just want to say, first of all, thank you all for having us this evening. And secondly, I think Richard did a wonderful job of presenting what the applicant's intentions are here with the rezoning and the SLUP request. And we're happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Okay. We'll get to that after we get through the public hearing. Is there anyone else who wants to speak in favor of this application? Ginger, do you see any hands?
I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Okay. Is there anyone who would like to speak against this application? Ginger, can you check on your end, please?
Please raise your hand in the Zoom app. I see no hands raised at this time.
All right. So with that, I will end the public hearing unless there's an objection. Seeing none. All right. It's time for council and questions and comments. And this is a first read. All right. Anybody have anything? Nope. John?
I guess there's really no information regarding the secondary educational purpose going into that facility. There's no details. It's just a rezoning with a blanket maybe someday. or is there any details to be provided?
This is Henry Bailey again. That's partially correct there. We're not at liberty to disclose who the post-secondary educational use may be yet because it's not solidified. But the reason for the rezoning request in SLUP is so that we have the flexibility in the building to bring a tenant like that in to either one of those buildings in the future.
And as far as, thank you, sir. And as far as the zoning or rechanging it to educational aspect, for Richard or staff, is there any other requirements, parking, elevators, anything, any other access, any other requirements that the city would have in order to allow us or require the applicant to have in place in order to have this rezoning?
At this time, there is no additional requirements because the two buildings that are there and the parking deck there's no proposed to change anything to this property at all. So that staff's perspective is the current facilities would be sufficient to meet all the needs of any potential clients they may have on their site.
Great, thank you. I have no other questions.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah.
Joe, go ahead.
Well, you know, when we exercise and grant slips in the past, that's usually with land disturbance permits, and we give you like, are you going to do it within 24 months? And so on. So it would be helpful to know if there's a time frame on that. Secondly, and I sent a note to our staff regarding the transportation issues for traffic. And we've got this idea of a traffic study, but that kind of has a linear approach of saying, you know, you're just going to have more and more cars on the road based on the use. So we don't know the specific use. We don't know who would be using it. I don't see how you could get a traffic study accurately without knowing who would actually be using it. So I'd like to be able to get some more information on that. There's a traffic impact study, but also when we get down to it, it's called a transportation management plan. So there's a holistic transportation demand management. If you could look up TDMs for the applicant, I'd be curious to see if you could follow that kind of methodology. It's a holistic approach of managing traffic. You know, we've got the former Georgia Perimeter College here, Georgia State University, over in a residential area, and that definitely, you know, pre-COVID has a lot of impact on our residential neighborhoods. So I'd like the applicant to consider looking at a transportation demand management plan that looks at alternative means for transportation, that looks at people for commuting, carpooling, using public transit, and so on to get to their destinations. That's my question / comment. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No. Okay, so we will not vote on these tonight. We will see them again in 2 weeks or in our January meeting, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That's correct.
So I have a quick question for the applicant if he's still available.
I'm still here.
Do you have a sense at least of what type of tenant you're talking about? Are you talking about a high school? No.
No.
Post-secondary, right?
The applicant Gil is the applicant representative Gil is on the line as well. I'll let him speak further today. Gil, can you speak on that?
Right. He doesn't have to give us specific names, just an idea so we can measure impact a little bit, maybe.
Sure.
Yes, Mayor Deutsch and councilors, thank you for hearing this tonight. And I just wanted to answer your question. It would be a for-profit, generally type of school. So we're talking college level or graduate level institution. We are in discussions with more than one at this point. And these are all names that would be familiar to you in close by or in other submarkets here in Atlanta.
And if you could just identify yourself for our clerk, please. Tell your name. I don't know that she would have heard it. For the
Certainly. This is Gil Hearn.
And so, all right, well, that's helpful to know. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. All right, well, we will see this on our January agenda, correct, Richard or Richard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. And thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, so on to the consent agenda. We are on the consent agenda. Does anybody have questions or comments? Go ahead.
I'd like to acknowledge at least
Right.
one member of
Right.
the community that we are nominating to a board that's here tonight.
Right,
And
Ryan.
I'm not sure if there's anybody else on what
I'm going
line.
to
Zoom.
read the names.
That'd be great.
And so just so the general public knows and council, that for this, we generally are going to try to appoint to boards and commissions twice a year, June and December, but COVID made things a little complicated this year. So this is pretty much a year's worth of appointments, with the exception of a few mid-year vacancies that we filled. I went through the applications we had and slotted as many people as we could, because people had been waiting for several years to be appointed. And so we are appointing Cheryl Strickland to the Dunwoody Development Authority, reappointing or appointing Olin Akers, Carol Allen, Ken Wright to the Urban Redevelopment Authority, Cher Breslin to the Discover Dunwoody Board, and we just appointed her like a month or two ago, but she was appointed to fill a term that has expired. To the Sustainability Committee, Ronald Davis and Debbie Schindelman and Forgot Adelaide and Avery Watts will be our student representative on that board. Alcohol license, and we still have some student openings in the sustainability. If you have a high school student who might be interested, or a college student who studies in the metro area. Alcohol licensing board, Andrea Hirsch, Suzanne Milan, and Bona Allen, and the zoning board of appeals, Ellen Etheridge, Ryan Essinger, and Ryan Schwartz are all being appointed this evening. We are grateful to those who have served and to those who are being appointed to serve tonight. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Moved by Joe.
Second.
Second by Pam. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Sharon, that passes unanimously.
Mayor, moving to business items on the consent agenda now. And the first item, number 15, is a second read of an ordinance of the City of Dunwoody, creating procedures for establishment of public art installations and implementation of public art program.
Okay. Michael?
All right, thank you. Again, this is the second read for the public art ordinance. As we discussed 2 weeks ago, this ordinance does a number of things, but it defines public art, what public art is specifically to the City of Dunwoody, creates a public art commission that is responsible for approving public art and helping the city create an annual public art plan, as well as help us think about art in general. And then it lays out a general process for submitting public art. I've had a number of questions about sort of next steps, what happens after we approve this plan. The next thing we would want to do, if it's approved tonight, would be in January, hopefully bring back and actually seat the 7 members of the Public Art Commission. It's going to be, we need to get them on board as soon as possible to actually get the work started. Also had a number of questions about performance art, exhibits, and other things. I wanted to sort of clarify that again before we open this up. We felt it was important, performance art is spelled out directly in the public art implementation plan that Todd Brezzi did for us earlier this year. But in this ordinance, we wanted to make it very clear that the things that needed to go to this public art commission were separate from performances or exhibits that would need to go through a separate process at the city that would actually get a special event permit. So we just wanted to clarify that. Performance art is absolutely part of what we want to do. It would simply not go through this particular commission to get approval. So I'll open it up for questions.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? This is quite an accomplishment. We are so excited. And with that, I will call the question. Oh, nope, I need a motion, sorry.
Move to
Jumped ahead.
approve.
Moved by Jim,
Second.
second by Joe. And Jim is going to be our chief art purchaser, right? Just kidding, just kidding.
On that note, I am in the process of purchasing the original of the lemons to Monarchs, but that's for personal use. For city use, I will look to this board.
Okay. So with that, very excited to call the question. All in favor of adopting and passing the Public Art and Public Art Commission ordinance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously, Sharon.
Number 16 on the agenda is approval of gateway and wayfinding plan, also Michael Starling.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we're bringing another topic to you that we've been talking about for a long time as Brian Bays and David Argo from TSW get set up and share their screen. I provided a brief overview a couple of weeks ago. Brian and David are back here to present the actual plan. We're asking for input on a couple of things tonight, and they will share those, specifically sort of some input on a number of, we have 3 signs, the vehicular signs that we need some input on. Next steps, if this is approved tonight, early next year, we would bring back an RFQ or an RFP for a contract to actually begin implementing these. This is the plan, it's the design. We have costs associated with that, but before we implement something, you will get to see that contract as well before we spend any money. So it looks like Brian and David are ready to go. I'll hand it over to them, and I'll be here for questions after. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Bays with TSW, Principal TSW and a landscape architect. I have David Argo with me as well, who is responsible for putting together a lot of this material. Next slide, please. We've kind of been working on this for about 1.5 years now, and we last fall made an initial presentation of this work to this group, and we got some feedback, and things kind of slowed down for a while, but we have been able to incorporate those changes, and also had an opportunity to go out and get some kind of real pricing information from fabricators that might help kind of inform some of the decisions. So just a quick recap on kind of at a high level on where we began with this. We had a series of public input meetings with small stakeholder groups. We did a small stakeholder group survey and got a lot of feedback that informed our kind of initial pass at this. One of the great things about Dunwoody is that it's a very kind of diverse area of placemaking. You have Perimeter Center, which we call the kind of urban pulse. And then we have, it's surrounded by this kind of green belt of suburban neighborhoods that we kind of refer to as neighborhood tranquility, and kind of resolving those two things together to come up with the kind of ideas behind they're the basis of this wayfinding package was challenging, but also great. So, if you look at these 3 words, these really are the essence of this kind of package. Rooted, Dunwoody is a community of families and businesses, and we thought that granite, the very granite that Dunwoody is built on was a great material to represent that. The urban piece, the perimeter center piece, the energy that is there, the buildings and the structure that is there, we're representing with steel and concrete. And then the thriving piece is really represented by the landscape that will kind of surround these elements once they're installed in the future. So next slide. A couple other things. We have a color palette. This is based on a couple different things. You have a signage, you have some signage in place already at, with Parks and Rec. You also have an existing city logo. And then we drew from other kind of environmental colors like the steel and some of the more urban colors to come up with this palette. Next slide. And also we picked some very readable, legible text, two different types. One that is serif, which is good for reading larger letters, and then sans serif for smaller. So next slide. Okay. I'm going to kind of introduce the sign families. I'm going to let David talk a little bit about the details. The first kind of, the first round of signs we want to talk about are kind of more in the sheet sign family. And these have evolved probably the most since we last talked to this group. Some of the comments that we got back were about text height and size. We've responded to that. We have both a pedestrian scale sign that we want to look at, which could either be temporary or permanent. It is really more focused around kind of directing people walking in urban areas. And then we also have vehicular signs, and we have three different options to show you there. One that's the most basic, and then a couple more that add some details. So David, why don't you walk us through those?
Sure. Evening, everyone. We'll start with the pedestrian pole sign. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of all the fine details, but as you can see here, we have a 30-inch by 30-inch D-shaped sign, very identifiable for placemaking and branding. This will be made out of metal, most likely aluminum. We did speak to our fabricators about a plastic option. They advised against using plastic or acrylic due to its being more susceptible to breakage and warping. And as with any wayfinding, keeping it simple is probably best. We just have simple destination tags, estimated times, and then easily identifiable icons and arrows. And that 2-inch letter height should give you a viewing distance of 20 feet, which will be good whether you're on foot or on a bike, maybe if this is next to a multi-use trail or something like that. And then this is just a shot in context there, so you can get an idea of scale and context. And then these are the three options for the vehicular pole signs. They're about 5 feet by 7 feet each, so they are kind of large, but not overbearing. And down below, you can see all of the elements which these signs have in common. The 6-inch letter height should give you a viewing distance of 60 feet, which is great for when you're in a car. And the mounting height is great, gives you great visibility in the car as well. These will also be made out of metal. Option A over here has a frame on the top and bottom and 3D cutout letters on the top, and it will be centrally mounted on the pole. Option B is much the same with the addition of frame on the left side, and it'll be strap mounted to the side of the pole. And then option C, as Brian mentioned, is most cost effective. There are no 3D elements, and that'll be centrally mounted as well. And again, keeping it simple, easy to read, destination names and arrows, and then the space at the bottom can be for specialty items such as MARTA. I think that's, we've got some shots again to see in context here. Mounting height keeps it out of the way for people walking, and also provides good visibility when you're in the car as well.
So the next kind of level of signage we looked at was gateway signage. And I think, you know, one of the things, part of the study was actually looking at opportunities for places to put these signs. And what we quickly found out was that there are a lot of different shapes and sizes of right-of-way and places that we might want to stick these. So we came up with 3 different options, a vertical option and 2 horizontal options. The top the top horizontal option, you can see is kind of more human scale. The bottom is much larger and made for obviously larger spaces and more kind of highly visible spaces. So David, why don't you walk us through the details?
Sure. This is the smaller horizontal sign, about 18 feet long and 18 inches high. Great, great seat wall height. This is next to a public space. Good place to sit down, take a photo. All three of these signs, we use a lot of similar elements, but we use them in different ways. So we have that unified look with a little individual identity for each sign. Get into the materials here. The letters will be metal with a frosted acrylic panel on front and back, internally lit with LEDs, give you a nice soft glow. And then we have a concrete core with a granite veneer, solid slabs on the front and back. And then on the sides of this smaller sign, we'll have some granite strips that give it some nice texture and visual interest there. And also these stainless steel bands that run throughout the sign, you can see those here, serve two purposes. One, visual interest in breaking up that granite veneer, and also serving as a skate deterrent. This is the vertical sign, which would be useful in really tight right-of-ways, really narrow areas. 18 feet tall, and this has a concrete base as well, which serves two purposes. One, it gives this tall structure a place to land, but also keeps these letters out of pedestrian head height when you're walking by. And this can, of course, be covered up by landscape, what have you. Again, similar elements, stainless steel letters with internally lit panels, granite veneer on all sides, and the stainless steel bands are actually going to be flush on this option because there's no need for a skate deterrent. This is the larger horizontal sign for those areas in which we have lots of room. Again, very similar elements, with the exception of the end caps being a solid monolithic granite blocks. Give it a lot of presence and visual anchor to this one. That's it.
And then the last kind of category, which is the fun category, is placemaking signage. So the idea behind these signs is they're more interactive. They still project the Dunwoody brand, but they're climbable and interactive. And you'll see that the bottom option, or the bottom sign, the Dunwoody swing sign, has a lot of interesting elements to it: lighting, pictures. It's got some swings, and then the top element is kind of more static with lighting, but still interactive and climbable. So,
yeah, these are both great options for interactivity and photo opportunities, which is also always helpful for placemaking and city branding. This sign is 14 feet high, about the same wide, so it'll have a lot of presence. All stainless steel, with the middle cutout being a darker color, and this middle portion is actually all supported internally. So this is actually a gap here through which lights can just shine through. So sort of similar to the frosted panels on the earlier signs, but no actual panel there. I think that's it for that one. And then this is the swing sign. I've got some of the main dimensions on here. Very large, 12 feet high, about 60 feet wide. The height of the uppercase D at 8 feet, and the lowercase letters about 6.5 feet. And all of these swing clearances were defined by the playground guidelines. So these are painted metal letters, Dunwoody blue and white, and then the supporting structures be a darker gray. Excuse me. And then on the back here, I'll get into the detail on this later, but we do have these suspended fiberglass O swings that will be internally lit and a nice soft glow at night. And then the back of the letters will have applied graphics on a backlit panel. So these pictures can light up at night while also being visible during the day. And then on the top of the structure, we have these cutout letters that will project in the shadows. Everything will be okay. And the note about fall surfacing here is sort of planning for worst case scenario. We do have plan for these to be interactable and climbable. So this fall surfacing, whether it's artificial turf or some poured in place rubber surfacing, depending on the context, will make it safe for even the most adventurous children in case they climb to the very top. I think that's it.
Yeah, so we did take this out for pricing. We did not take this out to bid. We took this out for informal pricing and also input from fabricators. So some of the changes we made to the designs were based on input from fabricators. The swing sign is specifically, we actually are working with a playground company that has experience with dynamic structures like this, and they provided us kind of turnkey cost information. We talked to three sign fabricators for all the sign pieces. One of the fabricators is non-responsive, so the range that you see below each sign option is the range of 2 fabricators. And we also added a little bit of extra cost for mobilization and some other items. For instance, on the swing sign, there were some light elements that we had to estimate cost on because they're kind of special effect elements. And then other things on all these signs that we took into account was their LED lights. So we have the ability to change colors fairly easy with all those and flexibility to kind of do things like that. So I won't read through each of these, but you can see across the top are the vehicular sign options. The value option does save you some money, but the kind of higher end sign with the cutouts actually is pretty reasonably priced or something. And then the lower options are different types of gateway signs. So, and I think that's it. We'd like to open up for questions and a big thank you for letting us be involved in this project. It's really been a fantastic journey, and we've enjoyed working with everybody on this. So I'm looking forward to see some of the stuff get built.
Thank you. It was fantastic. Questions? Anybody? Go ahead, John.
Thank you for the presentation. Can you tell me about some of these signs in the sense of the wear and tear? For example, the word Dunwoody up on top of the signage. Has that been installed somewhere else? And what does it look like 3 years later?
So we talked a little bit about this with the fabricator. So, we gave them some performance specifications. Their pricing does reflect signage that is climbable and interactive. If it's in the public realm and accessible to people, they're going to climb on it. Initially, we did have it as stainless steel, which wasn't really cost effective. So they used a 3-part powder coating process for the paint, and they priced the kind of heavier gauge metal to withstand some of that. But the materials that we picked are very robust.
1 second. I think someone may not be muted. Hold on 1 second.
Oh, sure.
Could everyone on the call that's a participant make sure they're muted, please? All right, go ahead. Thank you.
So similar applications for these materials. I mean, there is some maintenance and some wear and tear. It's about a 10-year kind of threshold for the paint on the letters, where you might have to come in and provide some refinishing. And a couple of the sign fabricators actually offered up to answer some very specific questions about that type of stuff, because that's usually one of the first questions people ask for, and rightfully so when you're making an investment like this.
All right, thank you. And then, Michael, I saw that we had a possible sign for over the highway. What was planned there? I'm just trying to, did I see that somewhere? There was something over the highway.
I think none of these signs, I think, would necessarily fit that. We did sort of think a little bit about the locations of where these would go, and they do have part of their report and their plan have very specific sites. None of these would be, I think, applicable to go over the highway. Although I think the general idea would be that it's going with the Dunwoody as the sign on some granite. But yeah, we did not design a sign specifically to go over the highway.
And did the PCID already review this, and where are they on this aspect?
They have been part of this planning process all the way through. And just as a reminder, that Discover Dunwoody funded this plan, so it really came out of their strategic plan. They included the city, obviously, as well as the PCID. The next thing, if this is approved by City Council, we would present it to the CID as well, because they have agreed to be our partner in implementing these signs, at least the ones that are in the CID area. So they are totally on board with this project.
Okay, thank you. Just a final comment for me. I'm not a big fan of the single D, but that's just my personal opinion. And then finally, one more question I thought of. As far as the playground structure, the swing, the everything will be okay, I see as part of it. Is there any issue in the sense of licensing for using that statement? From the artist, there was a legal conflict at one point, and I just wondered if, I want to make sure that if we start using that in our own city art, that there's not some retribution later.
Yeah, I think that's okay, but certainly before we ever implemented it, we would double check with Sproul as well as the artist. And we do have a plan, obviously, to bring that sign in some form back to Brook Run. And as you saw the cost of that swing sign, there may be one, possibly two. You sort of have to think of that sign as a playground, and that's how it's going to act, and that's really what it costs. But before we move forward, we certainly would double check that.
All right, great. Thank you for the presentation.
Joe?
Yeah, thanks, Michael and Brian. Great plan here. And I'll just give you a short couple of questions. I would consider this a design guideline, and that when the rubber hits the road, would the next checkpoints would be, let's say we're going to go with X, we'd pick something. So would that go back to council, or what would happen next?
Absolutely. So this is the design. So early next year, some point next year, we will come back to you with a contract to actually put a number of these in place, whether they're the placemaking or the gateway or the vehicular signs or whatever. Yeah, the council will have to approve another contract to actually implement this. So you're right. This is not the final.
Right. And I totally appreciate that. I want to be big picture, let you guys do the implementation and low level design, but I like the idea. Brian, I was following along on your slide, last slide. I don't know if it's in our packet, because you showed last slide showed a summary slide with the different pricing options. I didn't see that in my packet in the PDFs that were attached in the agenda. Brian, could you share that last screen, or could we get that sent back, that one estimated cost? I didn't see that in my packet.
Yeah, I apologize. That was not in the original presentation that I included in the packet. I will send that to everyone when
All right.
I'm done here.
So could you hang on there right now? The vertical on the bottom left, that estimated cost range, is that what would be equivalent to what Brookhaven has put in? You know, the Brookhaven has installed some gateway sites. Is that about the physical size and dimension? And is that similar?
It is similar. It is not as, you know, those signs, they're columns, they're a little bit wider. The granite is a little bit wider on those, and obviously they have those banners that kind of stick out more. But I would say if you look at the width from the right-hand side of the D where it sticks out to the left-hand side of the granite, that is probably about comparable to the width of those. They're really different signs, but
as far as the size goes,
yeah,
and impact and use, it would be similar, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that just helps me visually. I get the idea of it because I like what Brookhaven has done, and so that estimated cost range for those, the vertical ones, look very doable. Has there been conversations, Michael, with Brent in our Dunwoody Trailway wayfinding signs and some type of a potential integration with that? Because they're using a different design standard, which I like, but what's the touch points between our bicycle network, the Trailway network, and those signs?
Yeah, Brent was part of the team from the city that looked at this, and so we'll have to decide, you know, where exactly these go. Obviously, we have the D, the pedestrian sign. That might not be what we choose to put on the trail system. We're going to have to make that decision. You know, exactly where those go. Those might just be pedestrian signs in the general area. And I do think it's important that we think about these sort of in priority. The vehicular signs, you know, 20 years ago were probably really important. They're not as important now. So when we implement, because we're not going to be able to implement this all at once, it's going to be a staged process. We need to think about where we want to spend our money to get the biggest bang for the buck. And so, yeah, we'll have to talk about this. We did not think about that D sign specifically on the Trailway network. I do think we want to brand the Trailway throughout the city as one trail network.
Right, and I like the idea with the pedestrians that show it's a, you know, I've seen those urban tactical signs. It's a 5-minute walk to a coffee stop. It's a 10-minute walk to the library from here. And also from cycling, you can show that as well. So, you know, your perimeter mall, it's a 10-minute bike ride to the Dunwoody Village, or it's a 5-minute, you know, 15-minute bike ride to the, you know, biking is that intermediate there. So I get this priorities and I appreciate that. You know, we got to start somewhere, but eventually when we get down to having more of those signages, it'd be great to show if you're on a bike, it's only a 10-minute bike ride to Brook Run Park or whatever as well. Let me also ask you about, do we have to follow our own permitting for signage? Does this follow our existing sign ordinance? These signages, and if we're going to install them, do we have to actually go through the permitting approval process as a city?
I would need to ask either Bill or Richard on that. I don't believe we do.
I'd like to just
we do not.
Like to just make sure we're checking them out. Was Richard, were you on that?
Yes, I'm here.
We're good.
Technically,
Okay.
we do not need to follow our ordinances, but it's a good idea if we do. But
just want to see if we had to follow that or making sure. So, okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Just a quick question on the vehicular sign with Dunwoody on the top, not within the same sign, but on top. Is that lit anyway? Like the mentioned inside panel lights, are those lit at all?
Right now, none of those we're calling those sheet signs are lit. I can't imagine those happening in many places where there's not really good lighting. I'm thinking a lot of those would happen in the perimeter area, but there could be some that happen outboard there as well. So, but they're not individually lit.
Yeah, I just was wondering, just the actual word Dunwoody, the ones that were on top of the sign. Yeah, that part.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Pam, just if I could point it's almost, I don't know how if we could make up could we make one up on cardboard, one to scale, just to see what it looks like in the day and night, and kind of paint it and show it? And that would be idea. That would be great to see the ones with the sign, with the little number, above it, and then without it, for readability, both at day and night, and different age groups of people. Hey, sorry. Thanks, guys. Just idea.
Thanks all. Like what I'm seeing here, like where we're headed. Few comments and questions. When it comes time for getting involved with putting out an RFP for fabricators or discussions with fabricators, you might want to chat with Michael Smith and the folks at Public Works, see if they have any input on what should be in the specifications for the signage, and they can probably comment better on longevity. John, so, it might be something you want to have a side conversation with Michael about. Michael Smith.
Yeah, and just to Smith was part of the team that looked at this from the very beginning, so we have leaned on him heavily on the types of materials we should use, and because obviously he's got experience and probably will be the one who's implementing this.
Well, and that ties into my next question then, which is, on the vehicular sheet signs, has anybody looked at whether, those can be attached to a standard perimeter center pole, and everything's happy structurally? Have any engineers looked at that and blessed it? So that just something to, obviously that changes the cost equation significantly if you're having to put in a pole versus just put up a sign.
Yeah.
Then the last comment is a pet issue of mine that most of the folks sitting up here have heard before is light color temperature. I'm on a mission against anything but cool white or lower color temperature lighting, in the lit environment. The 4,000 degree K color temperature stuff messes up people's circadian rhythms, and we really ought to be trying to stamp it out at every opportunity. So just, make a note that when it comes time to light signs, let's light them at 3,000 degree K or cooler. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. I'm very excited about this. I think this is a much needed addition to our city, and I think it'll be a great thing. I'm very excited for when we actually start having these signs out there at our gateways. To jump on the question that, or kind of build off the question that Pam had, and actually Joe mentioned too, with the street signs with the Dunwoody on top of it. It might just be because we're looking at it in one dimension instead of 3 dimensions. It seemed that the one that was mounted on, centered on the pole, the Dunwoody kind of blended into the pole a little bit, whereas the one that was side mounted was much more identifiable. And again, it may just be in the context that we're looking at it. But that's just an observation I had, that my preference was the side mounted one. The Dunwoody stood out more. But in a 3D environment, I don't know if that would be, have the same impact or not. And getting off the design part, there was another portion of this included in our packet that dealt with the locations. Are we going to talk about that tonight as well? Or is that going to be something, once we have some signs ready to go, that we'll start looking at locations?
Yeah, well, I think we'll get into the details of locations. Obviously, Brian and David have done a lot of work in coordination with Michael Smith about specific locations. That was part of what we were looking for. But there's certainly more work to be done on very specific, where these should go, where's the utilities. And so when we start implementing that, we will get even a finer detail on the exact locations.
Okay, and I won't get too deep into the weeds tonight. That's something that we have plenty of time to work on and look at, but there were some gateway locations that I thought were absent that would benefit from a sign. And I also thought there were some locations for informational signage and other placement issues, but we have plenty of time to talk about that, so I won't go down that road tonight. But thank you. I am excited about this, and I really look forward to us putting our first sign in place.
Yeah. Hey, Lynn, I have a question. Couple questions.
Yes, go ahead, Stacy.
So in a quick glance at the price ranges, and I know it's just an informal, survey, but what do you think the difference is? Like one of them was for 1,300 and one of them and the same sign had a price of 6,000. So what's the difference between a 1,300 and a $6,000 sign? Do you guys know?
So, and I'm not sure, David, if we included this information, the detail in the detailed kind of cost estimate, but we can share this information. There were a couple of fabricators that made some different recommendations for how to approach the sign. We didn't alter their cost. We just included the cost with the recommendations that met the performance specifications. And we have that detailed information we can share with you.
So then my next question is, and if this is put out to bid, do we have to take the lowest bidder, or can we look at the quality and what we're getting for a sign?
Well, I don't know about the low bid question, but let me tell you this. I think one of the things that needs to happen to the bid package, and we've got a pretty detailed set of drawings, but some of the feedback from the fabricators, which we've gotten back, we need to modify the drawings to include, because I think we did get some really good feedback on some things that will impact durability and kind of usability. So some of that will be modified before the package is bid, but what we have right now is probably like a 90% bid package. It just needs to be updated to bid. And
Gotcha.
Obviously we need a location to be able to bid it.
Okay.
And some of it is the number of signs that you order.
True. And that.
Right? If you order a lot more signs, the per order goes down, and we really couldn't get to a good number on the vehicular and pedestrian signs yet. So that's some of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in contrary to John, I like the big D. Just there's my opinion. Okay. Thanks, Lynn.
And I think the big D would have to be placed somewhere with context.
Yeah.
You can't just put it on the side of the road and people understand what the D is, but if you put it in the right place, it is really a placemaking type sign.
Right. So I just have a quick question, and it goes back to John's question about the highway. So in the next 2 years or so, there's going to be a new bridge at Chamblee Dunwoody, and we have been in discussions-ish with PCID about not just having plain ugly, what'd you call it, metalwork or something on the sides of the bridge. And so if, Michael Starling, are you still there?
Yes.
I don't see you, okay. If we proceeded that way and we wanted just to have Dunwoody like they do in downtown Atlanta, they have one that says Atlanta. And I think, is it in Alpharetta? They have one, I don't know what the one says over 400. But if we wanted to do this, is this adaptable to that use? Because we would certainly want the same font. I would think we'd want some consistency if that's the direction we go with the bridges. Well,
Certainly, I would say every aspect of the Dunwoody is adaptable. We probably wouldn't use granite up there.
No. It would be metalwork, I'm sure,
Yeah.
or something. I don't know.
That'd
what
be
material
sealed.
it is.
It could totally work. I mean, it's very, if you look at the design of the swing sign version of Dunwoody, the actual letters is actually very similar to the Peachtree one you referred to down here in Midtown. It has graphics on it. So it's very adaptable, yeah.
Okay, that's just something to keep in mind. And then on the swing, which is, does it save money if we don't do the everything will be okay shadow thing? I'm just curious, would it save money or not necessarily?
I mean, yeah, it would.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, if you don't do the
All right.
trellis structure, that cuts back on the amount of work that you're doing for sure.
Okay. All right. Anything else? And we need to vote on this tonight. This is an action item. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay.
Move to approve.
Moved by Jim. Second by, that was moved by Jim, Sharon, second by Pam. Any further conversation, questions, concerns? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously, Sharon. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a memorandum of agreement between the City of Dunwoody and Discover Dunwoody regarding CARES Economic Assistance Program Tourism Reopening Campaign. Michael Starling.
Thank you, and I appreciate you agreeing to add this agenda item at the last minute. I apologize. I did not realize until the agenda had already gone out that this needed council action. The Economic Assistance Program that the council approved on November 9th included a budget for tourism reopening campaign of $100,000. This memorandum of agreement identifies Discover Dunwoody as that recipient of funds, and it details the marketing plan on how those funds will be spent. As you know and can imagine, our hospitality sector has been extremely hard hit by COVID, and we feel this money will be well spent through them, and they could certainly use the assistance. So I'll be happy to take any questions.
Oh, does anybody have any questions? Joe?
Is Stephen Schumacher on the call?
Yeah, no, he's here because he's presenting the
there you
next
are.
agenda.
Oh, there
item.
you are. Hey, thank you. I was just going to say, hey, perfect.
Okay. Did you have any questions for him? No, okay, he'll be the next item. We're not finished with this one
If you
yet.
have any questions, I can answer.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none, this is an action item.
Move to approve.
Moved by Jim. Second by Pam. Any further questions or comments? Stacy, you okay? Okay.
Yep.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Sharon, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, number 18, is Discover Dunwoody 2021 budget approval. Stephen Schumacher.
It's a great way to start your meeting by being awarded $100,000 right before you speak. So I thank you all for that. Yeah, we have if it's in the notes, you'll see some of the robust items. We've already created action items for how the language is spent in the CARES Act money. So we've already rolled out some campaigns that are ongoing as we speak that'll continue into the new year. So I have a quick presentation here for Discover Dunwoody. I know you're all used to, for those who have served for many years, I've seen Katie Williams up here. We all know that she went to Athens, Georgia just before COVID hit back in March. I was named interim executive director, which was supposed to be for a 4 to 6 week span. And of course, that fell through very quickly once the tourism industry was rocked by COVID. And I've been doing this with my director of sales role for now this entire year. And you'll see in the budget all of next year as well. So there is no future yet for a new executive director permanently, as we continue to kind of keep pace with everything that's going on. Sharon, did you have my PowerPoint that went through?
I bet it's not Sharon. Who, here comes Ginger.
It is loaded and Ginger.
Oh, it is, okay.
It's downloaded and Ginger's going to go up and pull that for him.
Okay, thank you.
If you need to, I can run it from up here.
I think Ginger's got it, unless she tells us otherwise.
That's it? Well, that was easy.
Except it's not show. Oh, you have to share it.
There we go. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, good. Oh yeah, so okay, perfect. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm. Is there something to do with the pictures?
Can you guys see the full screen?
Uh-huh.
Cool. All right. So we started off this year in 2020 with
No. There we go. Nope. That was it. That's good. Yeah. That's manageable. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
So we started off 2020 kind of on a great note. The first couple months that started through 2020 was rocking and rolling, some of our better numbers that we've seen, and most of the tourism industry had assumed 2020 was going to be great. And we obviously know what happened, and we saw some dark days in March and April coming out of the recovery. Dunwoody did a lot of shifting through the initial months with the type of groups and people that were coming into the destination. But all in all, we've maintained through this year. So I just wanted to quick go over some items from 2020. We never had a crisis management plan in place, and this is something we put together through the year of everything we did from the initial shutdown to about mid-October when we met with our board. By the way, Bill Baker is here. He's our treasurer and the GM of Perimeter Mall for some support. He's helped us a ton through our financials with all of this. And we now have the Discover Dunwoody crisis management plan in place that is going to, I don't know what type of future issues we may have, but this is some sort of outline of what we did to recover and to continue forward with what happened in 2020. So just quick going over some marketing issues, items from 2020. This is a few items that are measured through marketing is owned media and earned and paid, the three pillars of what our marketing team does. Your owned is your social media, your earned is your PR, and your paid is your digital. So I want to just quick show in a reduction year of where we took so much hits to our revenue stream, our paid media was wonderful in what our team on the marketing side with Melanie and Kim were able to do. You see here, we did a lot of different Google paid searches, social media, video advertising, and a lot of stuff also was brought in-house. You'll see some items on the right side with some of our marketing that we did. Again, a lot of it was done internally instead of through our PR agencies or digital agencies, which they did help us, but we had to do a lot of cutting to those budgets. And you see April, May, and July did some of the highest impressions that we had with website traffic. A lot of that had to do with the CNN stories and all the news stories from the Everything Will Be Okay in March and April. And then in July, when people started traveling a little bit again, and Dunwoody did pick up some of that leisure business, which was a rarity to see all that leisure business during the week, but we did see that over the summer. And so we were very impressed with all these, the impressions and the clicks that you see there for our analytics side of the media that we had on the marketing team's front. And then you see some special projects here that we did as well. Everything on the right-hand side are some of the items that we brought in-house or still had continuing or ongoing. Love for Lodging, Restaurant Week turned to Restaurant Revamp Month. And we showcased all the restaurants in Dunwoody for an entire month because most of them were not able to do those special menus. Arts and Culture, Your Holiday Haven, we're in that right now with a lot of participating hotels, restaurants, and other with the Sproul Gallery. And a lot of this was to create and garner local pride and provide community and partner support to keep people front of mind when it came to Dunwoody and travel. And most of these projects, like we said, were done either in-house or brought in organically after the budget cuts happened when our reforecasting happened with COVID. On the sales side of things, this is my cup of tea where I come from. Again, we were doing great. Our leads were on pace, book groups, conversion rates, appointments, everything was going smoothly. And then when COVID hit, truly nobody in groups came or traveled, or we were even looking at bidding out for future groups, even into 21 or 22 with the uncertainty. So we brought a lot of things internally. With me moving to the executive director role temporarily or in the interim, I was able to shift some of that strategy over to the operational side of things. And we just did anything that we could to get people front of mind on the sales front with reaching out to our planners, replanning family reunions for 21 that we're canceling in 2020, and just really trying to make sure people knew that when we were ready to reopen, either at that point at the end of 20 or into 21, that we were ready. We did a lot of our alphabet soup of those organizations, either in person or via Zoom. So we were at least contributing and staying with the Georgia folks that were local. We created a FAM tour, which has been really easy for me on the sales side to send out information to all the folks who don't know about Dunwoody and can't visit us here. With one click, we created a video of all 7 hotels or all 8 hotels with a tour of their inside their lobby, their rooms. And with one click, I can send that to a planner and they could see what Dunwoody has without coming here before they do start coming back, hopefully in 21 and beyond. And we even increased our star report, which this looks like nothing to the layperson, but this is how we measure our occupancy, our rate, and our revenue per available room for all of our properties. We were getting this monthly. By the time you get the report, it's more of a historical log versus something you can actually use. And so having a weekly update, we get it every Wednesday. We know from the previous week how we performed as a destination with all 8 hotels participating. So this was very helpful to get when it came to reforecasting and week-to-week forecasting, truly, because that's what we had to do in 2020 as we adjusted. This was something I was quickly proud of. This happened only a few weeks ago. Merritt's Global Events is a planning agency that plans meetings throughout the country, around the world too. And their annual conference was canceled multiple times this year because of COVID. And a bunch of their planners who have booked meetings with me in the Southeast or in Atlanta and in Dunwoody said, why don't we take some of the money we were being refunded from that and bring some planners here? And once we got the go ahead, we found 7 planners that plan meetings in the Southeast did want to travel. They came to Dunwoody. We hosted them at the new Hyatt place. Were they able to do some brainstorming, and we showcased all different opportunities. Some of the photos you see is from Vino venue. We did a cooking class there. They did a tour of the Crown Plaza, the Marriott, the new Sonesta, formerly the Staybridge. The embassy came and spoke to them. We had Alon's do one of our breakfasts. Le Meridian did a lunch. So they really got to see the destination in person during COVID, and they all felt safe and everything was done socially responsible. So this was a great win for us and a great story that we can tell going into 21 about having safe events and these planners showing that they want to bring business here in the future. So on to the numbers. So I thought about how to make this slide better looking, but it is what it is. The original revenues for 2020 showed a 1.769 budget, which we all knew and approved last year, which included a small increase, a $41,000 deposit to our reserves. And we are now looking at an $887,000 budget, which is about a 50% reduction. So our budget was cut in half due to COVID. We juggled, we balanced Bill on many phone calls, staying up late, a lot of Excel spreadsheets. We worked it out to where our expenses to our revenues for 2020 were relatively balanced. Our executive committee approved a 20% reserve spend to get us through 2020, which included reductions across the board, not bringing on an executive director, our team taking a slight temporary salary reduction. And we are on pace to hit that number of what we was approved all the way back in May when we reforecasted to get us through 2020, utilizing only 20% of our reserves to get us through there. And in 21, our budget is now $950,000. This we think is one of the more conservative budgets. Again, being down from the 1.7 that you saw in 2020, this is down 45%. Q1 is expected to have the lowest revenues. We're ready for that. It's not going to be pretty, but we're ready for it. With Q2 looking to be a slight recovery and returning of some business travel, light leisure. And then from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we expect small groups on the leisure side, family reunions, social groups, religious groups to make a small comeback that summer. And then Q3, Q4 is when we're expecting the actual real tangible groups. And this is what we're hearing from meeting planners based on who they're booking or scheduling to come in September through the end of the year with real groups that can utilize the space at the Crown, not really socially distant, some measures in place, but kind of back to normal, if you will. And you see the breakdown on the side of the expenses there. We're expecting it to be flat, expenses to revenues. So nothing back into the reserves. However, this doesn't include the opening of the AC Marriott, which is slated in July. So that revenue will be kind of additional. So assuming we do the most conservative budget, any dollars that come on top of that, we can put back towards the reserves that we used in 2020. Just for some notes here, the personnel side for us is 45% in operations versus the 55% of marketing and sales. So we're spending more on actually selling and marketing Dunwoody than on operational expenses. The standard, which is Destinations International, that's a governing body that kind of dictates or at least gives advice onto how DMOs, which is what we are, a destination marketing organization, operates. They run at a 53% operation and personnel and a 47% marketing and sales. So we have flipped that. And we've always been proud of that. When Katie was here through the years, we always hovered in that 55 to 60% range on marketing and sales and not operations. We forecasted this by asking the hotels what they were looking at. And most came back with these numbers, a 37 to 40% occupancy for the year of 2021. And that's down from about 55, 60% in a normal year. So still not great, but recovering. A 105 to 109 average daily rate, which again is down from about 145 to 150. It's going to take some time for that to recover. And then on our guest room count, based on those revenues, you do the math on what our projections are. That's how we came to the 950. And just for some context, Explore Brookhaven, who I know their executive director well, Renee, she told me that their budget was just over $1 million. They have a comparable amount of rooms like we do. They're a little more spread out. They're not as localized like we are in Perimeter, but they're hovering around $1 million as well, and don't expect any other additional revenues or support. So we know that we're in line with some some other properties and some other destinations that are at least comparable to us. So that's it. Definitely any questions. If Bill wants to make any comments as well as treasurer, let me know.
If nobody has any questions, Bill Baker, General Manager, Perimeter Mall, and Treasurer for Discover Dunwoody. Basically, I just wanted to publicly acknowledge, excuse me, the work that Stephen and the Discover Dunwoody staff has done this past year. They have, they've made a ton of cuts, both personally and professionally, with regards to what they, what they were taking home and putting on the dinner table. And so we're very grateful for that. They work very closely with the executive board and the board as a whole, and in collaborating throughout the year with how to very judiciously spend the funds that were available. Just because we have a large rainy day fund, we tried very hard not to dip too heavily into it, and I think we were quite successful. Some of the savings you can see is when Stephen goes on a sales trip, he doesn't have to spend very much time there because he talks so fast. So it's only a 2-day trip instead of a 4-day trip.
Keeps everyone's attention.
Right. But anyway, I really wanted to acknowledge the Discover Dunwoody staff, and because it's been, everybody knows what a challenging year it's been. Hospitality industry, along with the restaurants, some of the hardest hits. So thank you. And if you have any questions from a board spending standpoint, I'm happy to answer those as well.
Okay. Thank you both. Anybody? John?
Thank you, gentlemen. I know you just received at least one new board member today and probably another board member a month or two ago. Is there anything happening on the board aspect? I guess there was a master planning, something happened recently. Has that come in front of us? Is there any updates, and when's the next board meeting? They're open to the public, and what type of training for the board members? I'm just trying to get a feel for those new board members that are coming on, what they're expecting.
Perfect. So our board meeting's tomorrow, our last one of the year. It's at the Marriott at 10 a.m. We are going to implement in Q1 a board retreat of sort, whether it's for half a day, a full day, and we want to bring in either one or two of the entities that we utilize. So our agencies, we use OBP, Hemsworth is our PR agency. Bring one or two of those folks in so they can speak to the board about what those agencies do with us, as well as Kim, our director of marketing, and myself being there. And then on my end, there's the governing bodies, Destinations International. They're a little bigger than that. We have a localized Georgia Association of CVBs that J. Mark Walter spearheads. I believe you may have seen him at some of the events that we've held, including the tourism talks. I would want him to come in, as well as potentially someone from the Southeast Tourism Society, to then speak on boards and how that work as corresponding with the tourism industry and what we do, to onboard both those folks, but also kind of refresh and re-energize everybody that is currently serving on the board. And thank you to the council for bringing Cher and Zoe to our team, because they have great experience, and I've met with both of them and they're very excited. So
great.
Yeah.
That's all I was.
And the master plan, I think Bill can speak a little more to the master plan was kind of put on pause. Right. There's some elements to that we're implementing, but it was pretty much held as a tabled item for 21. Quite frankly, I would say till late 21, if not just because of the revenues that are so low. But it doesn't, we certainly bring it back to the table to start the year, because now that we have our feet underneath us, we have these two new board members. Now's the time as we're coming out of COVID and recovering.
Good answer. Thank you. I'm good.
Joe?
Stephen, I heard something's going on Wednesday at Ravinia, something with Holiday and Lights.
Yes.
You want to tell us about it?
So the Ravinia lights in the gardens, I believe they have different lights displays that they've put on there. Something that we weren't anticipating initially. So the Ravinia Gardens has done a lot on their grounds for all the lights as well. The hotel properties have also set up some lights inside as well. And mostly for the Crown, we definitely want people to get over there and see the space. If you haven't seen it since the reno last year, getting people into the property, having cocktails at Parkwoods or Lightwells, and enjoying the space while being at the grounds on Ravinia would be wonderful.
Yeah, so using that as an excuse, the idea of having these targeted, they may or may not have people heads in beds, but you still have people potentially spending some funds there.
Yes.
The idea of Parkwoods as a destination, to have something, If we get wherever else, over that you can do an outdoor social distancing, have events and just keep on going at that. I'd love to partner with you all, whether it's on a rooftop, open streets kind of thing, just block off a block and put some tents up, activate those spaces and draw people in. You've got some nice spaces in that area would love to see more of that.
And not to show the hands of the hotels, but at this point, they've hit the bottom and are coming back up now. Any groups that normally, we were riding high in our industry, especially in Dunwoody, our rates were great. Everything was rocking and rolling. So now's the time that we can get some of these more social groups in there, especially as we're recovering versus a year or two from now. So they're all very open. All the remaining staff from all those properties are very interested in hosting types of events like that. So to anyone that's hearing this or any local folks to come on in, they're willing to work and negotiate now more than ever to get groups, even if it's birthday parties, things like that you would normally not consider for a hotel. These active spaces like Joe is talking about at the Ravinia, the tent at the Marriott, Les Meridians outside at Portico, they're all willing to work with you. And the Hyatt specifically, they have new space if you haven't seen it as well. They're great too.
Well, these could be also just open to the public.
Sure.
With the cash bar and
Sure.
sell food. So
all those bars are open. Especially the Parkwoods right now, they are open. I think all 7 days a week. So come on, if you want to come out there to the gardens when it warms up a bit, but even inside it's gorgeous in there. So.
All right, thanks. I'm going to get on one off with you. I'll go offline about your website to be able to filter and find things a little bit. Given this day of COVID and so on, I don't want to go, controversial, but some people may want to have that extra layer of comfort of knowing what to expect when they walk in the door regarding COVID protocols and so on. So it might be a consideration to just take that extra layer there potentially to give people that extra, feeling of comfort to know what to expect if they're going to walk into one of those facilities.
Yeah, and every one of the properties has them mandated from their flagship, so IHG, Marriott, and they'll have kind of their own intricate ones, but we can definitely link it up to each property to show them what they're doing, from hand sanitizing and high touch points being sanitized, as well as masks. From what I know, every single property requires masks unless you're in your room at all times or seated for meals as well. So, and we, unfortunately too, at the website, that was something that was slated to be addressed in 2020, as far as a redesign and all that, that we were anticipating, and that's been, of course, put on hold.
Right.
So.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Just a quick comment.
I'll get to you, Stacy. Hold on.
Just
Sorry.
really impressed with, how y'all have rolled with the punches and reacted and, what y'all have done. So good job.
Stacy?
So just a quick question to Steve, with the CARES Act money that we just passed, is this just going to help out your budget? Do you have something specific in mind? Is it too soon to ask that question, or how do you foresee using that 100,000?
No, it's great. The language is very specific to be spent on new actionable items for marketing and sales initiatives, mostly marketing. So none of it, not a dime, will go towards anything that we had pre-existed or said we were going to spend on in our budget for this year. So it's all new items that we did through different agencies, mostly marketing the destination right now. The hotel properties as a specific focus, given that they've been hit the hardest. There's a campaign that will be starting this in a couple of weeks, or right around now in December, that moves into next year because of the way the language was written, that we are going to specifically be starting that now with destination hotels and meetings as well. There's one portion that we're putting towards a meetings company that called Connect Meetings that we utilize for our meeting planners, that email blast those planners now, telling them about the destination to come back either as soon as they can with their groups or down the road. But all the items are being presented and being executed in December, and will roll over into the new year as stated in the CARES Act. Yeah, recovery marketing out of COVID.
Great. Thank you, Lynn. I'm good.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I want to echo what Jim said. Y'all, you have stepped into big shoes at a very complicated time, and we are all grateful for the work you continue to do and everyone that works with you, your team. And, come let us know how things are going.
Sure.
And because I'm not 100% sure of your timeline in terms of when we start to on the upward with recovery.
Sure.
We are grateful for all the work you've done marketing our restaurants and businesses here. That is sort of your footprint, but it isn't who really pays your bills. And so but it was a big help and continues to be a big help. People still talk about, they still use your webpage. So we appreciate that.
Big thanks to Rosemary as well through all that with the restaurants. It was something that we never had done, but it was something that we wanted to do. We knew that every day was crucial for these restaurants. And we also knew that we had the time on the sales end. Sales was a little bit slower this summer. And, our sales manager, Race Roberts, stepped it up, and we're very happy to work with those restaurants. And yeah.
Right.
And the health of the restaurants as a community, even if it's outside of Dunwoody, you have to have healthy restaurants if you're going to have a healthy hospitality industry. Because if you show up and then there's no place to go eat, that's a problem.
Right.
And so it's almost, that was the first baby step to utilize during this crisis plan of supporting the restaurants, knowing that at some point in time when the beds start to get full again, these people are going to need a place to eat. And I think the National Restaurant Association is saying 1 in 6 restaurants are closing throughout the company. Luckily in Georgia it's not quite that bad, but we want to make sure we keep staying ahead of that. And trying to support them any way we can, and your efforts with the city and the out to lunch and take the lunch. And, you also be very proud of yourselves as city organizers in some of the things that you've done during this crisis that many other cities have not, and keeping your businesses healthy, including that small little one that I'm involved with. So we thank you very, very much.
Right. Thank you. Do we have to adopt? I guess we adopt the budget. Go ahead, Jim.
Move to approve.
Moved by Jim. Second by Pam. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Sharon, that passes unanimously. Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is approval of a facility usage agreement with Dunwoody Senior Baseball. Brett Walker.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have updated the usage agreements that I presented to you back on November 30th with a couple of comments that were made by Council. One being the additional language for the grease trap that Councilman Hennigan was concerned about for Dunwoody Senior Baseballs. There's a requirement that DeKalb County come out and inspect your grease trap annually. And historically, Dunwoody Senior Baseball has always paid for this inspection by the county as the primary user. So I went ahead and included that as a responsibility to them in their usage agreement. And also, Mayor Deutsch has concerns about parking during their tournaments. I went back and added some additional language that requires their facility attendants to also adequately monitor parking and direct traffic to appropriate parking areas in this usage agreement, and also in rush unions, which is right up after this. I believe that has captured all the concerns and comments that council had concerning the usage agreement, and open it up to your vote and your questions at this time.
Does anybody have any questions? Stacy, you okay? Seeing none, this is an action item.
Move to approve.
Moved by Joe.
Second.
Was that moved by Joe, second by Tom. Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that's unanimous.
The next item, item number 20, is approval of a facility usage agreement with Rush Union Soccer. Brett Walker.
To the same point with this one, I added the additional language for traffic monitoring and directional requirements from their attendant, and removed any language for grease traps in their agreement, as there isn't one in the new concession stand at the multi-use field. So with that, I'll open it for a vote and your comments and questions.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, John does.
Brent, at one point there was some disagreement or an issue regarding the use of equipment on the field, whether it be the nets, things of that nature. I think it may have been by the high school or by somebody who rented the property. Have those types of issues been resolved to where they shouldn't happen in the future and there's clear expectations on all involved?
Yes, we actually met with Rush Union today to start going through the process of booking time through our new system and how that works per the new usage manual. And we discussed that very thing and a couple of options we proposed to them today. And there hasn't been any more issues since that one, so just to clear that up. But going forward, we've offered to either they donate the equipment to the city and then we maintain it for any group to use. So there's no concern over one paying for any damages or upkeep as the other. The other option would be is that different user groups have their own equipment out there and they lock it independently. I prefer the former option where they donate the equipment to the city, we maintain it and allow any user group to use the same equipment so we don't have more than a single set of goals out there.
Right. It's just, it's hard to bring your own nets, I guess is what it came down to. I can understand everything else, but it was the net aspect I would think would be the biggest concern.
Sure.
All right. Thank you. Another question.
Anybody else? Seeing no questions, this is an action item. Need a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Moved by Tom, second by John. Any further additional questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Item 21 is approval of contract for lobbyist services. Jay Benecke.
Mayor and council, before you tonight is the culmination of about 2 months worth of works on rebidding our lobbyist contract for a 1-year contract and a 4-year renewal. We put it out in the fall of 2020 and 5 firms submitted proposals and we had an internal staff that reviewed them and found them all very competitive, but shortlisted 3 firms for interviews. And from those 3 firms selected one, and that is Taylor English Decisions. And the committee felt that Taylor English was a good fit with the city in terms of background because it had, with the staff that we'll be working with, over 100 years of combined work experience, along with its actual reputation. And in this past year's, in September's James Magazine, it was listed as the top law governmental affair firms in 2020. During the interview panel with each of the 3 different firms, we discussed about how we're going to shift a little bit, how we're going to work with the lobbyists this year. There's always that part about being reactionary, but some things are a little bit different. Like, for instance, our talking with DOT and talking with our neighboring jurisdictions or neighboring agencies like PCID. Before you tonight is a approval for a 1-year option, $30,000 annually with 4 1-year renewals after that. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, John.
Jay, I see Wendy up on the screen. Wendy, you're going to like to introduce yourself or say a few words yourself?
Happy to be here. Thank you so much, Jay, for that very pleasant and informative introduction. And thank you for the opportunity to just say hello to you all. Look forward to working with you all. And we appreciate the chance to do our work for you down at the state capitol. And
Wendy, I read your reviews and the work that you've previously done. I know you're basically an expert when it comes to healthcare. Maybe I'm wrong, but can you just give us a quick background of what you've done or what you can work on or what you've worked on when it comes to governmental and transportation issues?
Sure. Happy to give you a little insight. And it's not just me, it's our team. So I can give you a little background on myself. But I've been down at the state capitol for more than 25 years, and I do have a very healthy healthcare practice. But I also spent 4 years working for Atlanta City Council President Lisa Borders, have spent some time doing a variety of different things for different local governments over the years. But just transportation, we have a P3 client that we've been working for now for the last 6 months. I've done a number of transportation pieces of business over the years, so that wasn't new. It's just cyclical, as most things are at the state capitol. And so, like I said, my partner, William Woodall, who is a part of the RFP response, also has some good local government experience, as do I. Plus, our whole team has a really strong relationship with Georgia Municipal Association, the county commissioner, ACCG crowd. I mean, you've been down to the Capitol, I'm sure, before. It is a very small group of professionals, and we all know each other and work well together. And, I've not worked at a city in more than 10 years, but the work is basically the work. And the work at the state capitol, as you know, has a lot to do with your DeKalb delegation, which is also my home. I live in DeKalb in the city of Atlanta, but was in leadership DeKalb and have lots and lots of relationships at the county as well. So it was a combination of things, not just any one thing.
Great, thank you. Welcome to the team and welcome to all your team members to our team as well. So appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity.
Anybody else?
So could we explain, Wendy or whomever, how their communication process will work and flow? So if, like, for instance, the city of Atlanta, they had a council meeting of the full and they adopted a legislative priorities.
We'll do that.
And then, so how
We're going to do that. We'll adopt the legislative priorities probably in January. I mean, obviously in January.
Okay, thanks. So, then just want to kind of interact. So of how we would communicate, flow back and forth, both ad hoc and going forward. Thanks. Just to see how that would work. What does that look like?
So, sorry, I was just getting ready to take a drink of water, but I'll put it up. So how it should work is that we'll define our legislative agenda and then we will let Wendy and her team know. And then they will communicate regularly with a designated staff person who is, I don't know, Eric, who that is. Is it Eric or Jay? And then let us know if they need us down at the Capitol, correct, Wendy? That you will reach out if you need us, and you will partner with GMA. It is very rare. So as an example, I expect that we will have something on our legislative agenda that says that we would like legislation that keeps counties out of cities in terms of development authority work, perhaps. So that would probably not be an issue that GMA would jump on. And so we would need our team to work on that. But many other items that we have worked on in the past overlap with GMA. And so they work with GMA. Is that a good synopsis? But additionally, I wasn't involved in this. I didn't know any more than y'all did. I wasn't involved in the team selection or anything or scoring. But part of what we are looking for that is different in the past is someone who is readily available to help us facilitate conversations with GDOT and other state and federal agencies, as well as perhaps some work on the county level if we feel like we need it. Is that a good synopsis, either Wendy or Jay?
That's a good way. That's a really good way to put it, is when we talk to all the firms, we're looking at somebody that can help us foster those relationships and also very much be reactionary when we need to be.
Yes. And Wendy, does your firm do a legislative summary regularly of what's going on at the Capitol?
Yes, we do one
your
every
clients?
single week.
Okay.
Yeah, we do
And
one
so
every week.
We will be all added to that, correct?
That's correct.
City Council, okay. And then if you're interested as the session starts, and who knows what the session's going to look like because of COVID, right? But as it starts, if you're interested in testifying on an issue, if you have a specific interest, you can let Jay or Wendy know, Eric know, me know, and then we keep you in the loop of when to go. And Jim was down there a lot last year. We spend a lot of time focusing on stuff where the state wants to overstep.
That's a good summary.
Yes. And so, and I am now on the Legislative Policy Committee for GMA. I was recently appointed. So I expect, well, I don't know with COVID. If it wasn't COVID, I'd probably be down at the Capitol a fair amount. But we look forward. So that's how it works. Does that answer your question? And so if you have we'll get to the legislative policy development part soon. But yeah. And also a lot of our work is reactive. We can't always predict what the legislature's up to, right? Right. Anybody else?
Well,
go ahead.
A couple of quick comments. Yeah, I think that's very important, is just keeping an eye out for things that go on that might be adverse to the interests of the city. And you've had that municipal experience, so you know what we're talking about. No one is safe when the legislature is in session. Beyond that, I got some commentary from a constituent, and when he heard that Wendy was who we were dealing with, he was like, "Oh, she's top notch, good deal." So I just wanted to, my counterparts here on the dais to hear that, but we're glad to have you on board.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else? And this does come with a cost savings of previous years, in case y'all didn't notice. So appreciate that too. So with that, if there's no, Stacy, you okay? With that, if there's no more questions, I call the question. Oh no, I think I have to have a motion first.
Yeah, move to approve.
Moved by Pam, second by Jim. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that's unanimous, and it was moved by Pam, second by Jim, if I didn't say that clearly earlier. And thank you, Wendy. We look forward to working with you and your team.
Thank you so much. We do, you as well. Look forward to meeting with y'all soon.
Thank you.
Item 22 of the agenda is a resolution amending the budget for the fiscal year 2020 for the general fund and the SPOS fund of the city of Dunwoody, Georgia, pursuant to Article 5, Section 5 of the Charter of the city, beginning January 1, 2020 and ending December 31st, 2020, appropriating the amount shown on each budgeted expenditures, adopting the item of anticipated funding sources, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures from exceeding actual funding sources. That is Linda.
Yeah, Linda's here.
Yes, good evening. This two sets of budget amendments. One is for the general fund, the other is for the SPOS. We balanced the general fund using excess of insurance premium tax for the current year. We did have a high number of storms that we had to clean up. It still does not exceed the original budget. However, we do need to replenish a little bit for the public works on the Zeta had a big impact on us. Also in the SPOS, the budget amendment is for the machinery and equipment. This does not increase any of the budgeted items. It just allows for the spending in the current year.
Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Joe.
Hey, Linda. So I'm on the last page, the resolution that shows the columns, the source and use. What's so the memo says 123,000 is that what we're moving or looking at 123 moving from?
No, no. All I was trying to say with the 123,000 was that originally back when we knew COVID was coming, we cut the public works budget in the general fund down 123. I was just trying to articulate that even increasing this public works budget does not put it back to the original adopted 2020 budget. So what we're asking for in the general fund for public works is 50,000.
50,000. So I see that general fund 4,200 highway and streets, R&M storm damage removal 50,000. That's
correct.
Could that have been sourced from our stormwater fund?
No, I don't believe so. That is something that the Public Works is commissioned to remove, like trees that are out in the roadways and that kind of thing. So I do not think it would be appropriate use of stormwater fund.
Okay, this is all right. So it's not okay. When I heard storm, I was thinking stormwater, but thank you. Yeah, that
storm
was
damage.
Right. Okay. Thanks. That was my clarification. I was really it kind of gave me a red flag when I was seeing storm, the word storm. I was thinking stormwater, which we had just done last month, but last session. Thank you. No further questions.
Anybody else? Okay.
Move to approve.
Moved by Jim. Second by Pam. Any further discussion or questions? I have a quick one. Was Zeta declared an emergency? Was Georgia declared an emergency? And can we seek I don't know if you know this, Linda, or if Eric or Jay know, can we seek federal
I'm sorry, I
reimbursement?
don't know. Let's see if Michael Smith may know that. I didn't ever hear it declared, but I think Mr. Hennigan was saying that it,
Yeah.
It's easy to see if there's a presidential declaration. I can look in 3 minutes.
Yeah. Well, if we're going to approve this tonight, but if we can seek reimbursement from the federal government for this, Eric, can we investigate that? Or Jay?
We can follow up on that. That's no problem.
Okay.
yes, we
All right.
can.
All right, but we have to pay for it one way or the other, so.
Well, and you know, if it doesn't go up to the total amount,
Right.
you know, we won't spend it, but we will seek reimbursement if Councilman Hennigan is thinking it's declared as a, we'll, see if we would qualify.
It would have to be in Georgia.
Right. And some of the.
Right. It was not in Georgia. Okay. All right. With that, everyone in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Sharon, do you want me just to start the discussion items?
That's fine, Mayor, if you'd like.
All right. So this next one is me. So I added a discussion item to the agenda about the challenges the school system was facing getting schools reopened in some way, shape, or form. Tonight, as we were meeting, there was a public town hall meeting hosted by the superintendent. And so I'm going to bring us up to that point if it's okay with you, but I'm going to take a couple of minutes to tell you where I have been on this issue. So back in the spring with the previous interim, I guess she was made superintendent, Ms. Tyson, I had conversations with her in the spring, probably in May, bringing up concerns I had about how they were going to reopen schools and what I thought maybe they could be working on, what staffing challenges based on the meetings I was attending. I was probably attending actually more meetings on the national level than perhaps she was. And I had some conversations when they brought in candidates for the superintendents. I raised concerns about the facility. I was allowed to ask one question, and my one question was about facility maintenance and supply chain problems. And so as we have approached the beginning of the school year and through the school year, I have had regular conversations with several school board members. And I have recently, as all of you are aware, we've had parents, members of the community inquiring with us about the need for school to open. So excuse me as I pull up my phone because we were having a meeting too. So as of this evening, the superintendent has changed. So the superintendent in the school system had a plan based on metrics that the Georgia Department of Education published back in the spring that actually changed over the summer, but the school system did not necessarily adopt those changes. But as of today, they have set new metrics. And when they hit for after the first of the year, because obviously nothing's going to change. This is, I think, the last week of classes before winter break. So after the first of the year, they are going to use the metric of 10% positivity rate. And when it hits 10%, when DeKalb hits the test positivity rate of 10%, grades K through second, 6th, and 9th will be allowed to return if the parents choose. And then if it goes to 8, drops to 8 to 10%, and I'll come back to why I'm saying drops, the rest of the grades. And I don't have all the specifics, obviously, because we were meeting and I had to pay attention to our meeting. But so right now, DeKalb is at 10.2. It's important to note that we spent most of the fall and late summer well below 10%, actually well below 8%. And the reality is that for most of the pandemic, as the data metrics, the data reporting improved, DeKalb was doing the best of any county in Metro Atlanta. And then, like everyone else, the bottom has fallen out. So now DeKalb is probably, I haven't checked in a few days, but it's probably the same or slightly better, slightly worse than our neighboring counties. But these metrics are obtainable. But they're only obtainable if people do what they're supposed to do. And so I'm going to open the floor for any discussion, and then I'll lead to what I think our action items can be. If anybody have any, I mean, I only know what was texted to me. But it sounds like the plan has changed, which is, in my opinion, a step in the right direction. Yes, go ahead.
Did anyone say in your text, and probably they weren't really listening for this part, but are teachers essential? Did they name teachers
I
to
think
be essential?
they thought, and I think they thought it was a little confusing to follow, that teachers would be given choices.
Okay.
As a parent of a DeKalb County school student, I have a freshman, and like all of you, we've all received a number of emails and concerns from our citizens regarding schools and going back to school. And I did all the research and tried to figure out what's the right thing. Let me do all the research. And after finding that every school system surrounding us is back, every single community around us has a face-to-face option to some way, shape, form, or another. But yet we have students that are failing in the sense of not having the infrastructure, not having the support at home, not having the special education classes. I did all my research and I came up with the fact that I think DeKalb County is failing us to a certain extent when it comes to these metrics being so conservative. I understand they're doing what they feel is right for the safety of the children and for their employees and for the community in general. But I'm very glad to hear that they have reviewed the metrics and have possibly looking at ways in which they can bring back some educational face-to-face opportunities. So kudos to the school board for looking at options, and hopefully they can implement changes for those who want to return to do so. Because again, I think the need is there.
Anybody else? So,
Lynn, I'd like to say something.
oh,
as well.
Stacy, I'm sorry, I forgot you were there.
That's okay. Reading all the emails that we've received, and we do read them. There's one thing I think we've all learned is there's no right or wrong answer. It's not all or nothing, but right now DeKalb is nothing. It is just virtual. There are no options, and some vocabulary that has come into 2020. You know, you have cohort, quarantine, pivot, and DeKalb County was very quick to thank everyone, and they had to pivot in March and do this. I truly believe it's time for them to pivot again, and they need to have a plan to get kids back in schools, to give them an option. Kids have an option to play basketball. They have an option to be in a swim team. They have an option to wrestle. Now, apparently the GHSA has said you can wrestle somebody, but you can't shake their hand. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But there are kids who need to be back in school, and I implore DeKalb County to figure out a way to give kids options to be back in school.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
And I just second what's, Stacy's take on this as well. I mean, and John's analysis. I mean, everybody else is back in school, or has the option, and these kids need it. These kids need it, and I'm just not sure what the heck the school system is doing, but that's basically been the case for the entire time I've been on council and before. So it's nothing new.
Anybody else? Okay, so I got a text, and it is unclear whether teachers have a choice or not. And I understand there was discussion about additional testing being available. And so if it's okay with council, and I will send a letter to the superintendent offering our assistance in any way as a city any way that we can help them give families a choice. to get children back in buildings. And so that's the first thing. I have been in discussions with the DeKalb mayors. We may all send a letter. I'm not sure yet. We were waiting to see what happened tonight. I know this is very difficult for the school system. I don't overestimate the weight of this decision. DeKalb schools struggle with having soap in bathrooms and paper towels. And so the crisis highlights or exasperates or underlines their regular operational challenges. We have a brand new superintendent who came in with almost an empty cabinet and has had to hire and develop staff people, leaders. So that's my strategy. If it's okay with council, I don't need, the letter will come from me on behalf of council. When I write it, I'll make sure you see it. And then as to my community, who I have spoken to fairly often, we play a role in this. There has been some perceptions I have seen out there that Dunwoody is a haven for no COVID. That is not the case. We play a fairly significant role, depending on the week, in the county's new infections. And we all across the county, but I can only speak directly to the people in Dunwoody, play a role in getting this test positivity rate down. The choices we all make and the activities we participate in, if we are exposed or expose others, will keep not just schools from opening, but our hotels from thriving and everything else that's important to all of us, our businesses, our restaurants. Research is showing that it isn't the rules that are hurting businesses in most places. It's people's concern about catching the virus. If you want to support local businesses, wear your mask. Please wear your mask. So that's the first thing, wear your mask. Don't have big indoor parties. It is going to be very difficult this holiday season, but every choice we all make plays a role in what happens with the school system. And I have said repeatedly that COVID doesn't care if you think it's real or a big deal or not, because people are still catching it and spreading it. And data doesn't care about your feelings. The data is the data. And we have to, we can't just wish it to below 10% or the best case scenario below 8 so everybody gets to go back. We have to all take the steps necessary and make the choices. And it's hard. I have not eaten inside a building with my mother and since March, like everybody, lots of other people. We're all making choices, but we all play a role in helping to get that number down. And I know DeKalb can do it because we were doing it for a lot of months. And so I have confidence that we can all take the steps necessary and change the behavior. If we're not exactly living life, I get it. I wrote a couple of weeks ago, lots of us have COVID fatigue, including me. And, you know, I get it, but we're close. There's a vaccine coming and we're close. And there's other treatments coming. We are really close to perhaps the end of this. So I just implore everyone in Dunwoody to take the steps we need to so we can get the schools open. And that's all. Go ahead, Tom.
I just wanted to point out to you and the rest of the council that our local school board rep, Stan Jester, is actually tuned into the meeting and available if anyone has any direct questions for him related to the board.
Okay. Just if he's on, if he can address the teacher issue, but I don't see
Ginger, are you able to pull him up? He just texted me that he is available to answer questions.
All right, I see him now. Hey, Stan.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Yes. Do you have a sense of, did you hear me summarize what I think happened tonight?
Yeah, that was pretty close. I heard the question about the teachers.
Yeah.
And I think you can imagine that if a number of kids want to go back to school and none of the teachers for that grade want to go back to school, we can't have that. So special accommodations can be made for special medical needs, but generally speaking, teachers will not have a choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And also, I'd like to, Ms. Mayor, I'd like to point out that at the survey, half of the parents said they were not comfortable going back. Most of the employees said they weren't comfortable going back. So I think if you guys could pass a resolution, the administration really wants to go back, but I think they're concerned about public support.
Right, we'll send a letter.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll send a letter.
I do have a question. Obviously today, the vaccine started to roll out and there's going to be a priority system. Is there anything that we can do to get teachers elevated on that priority status? I don't know where they currently stand as far as in the priority stand, but I think that would certainly be a big help because a lot of our teachers are in high-risk categories.
Yeah,
and getting them elevated up there. Is there anything we can do, Stan, that you're aware of?
Yeah, that's a good question about who's going to get it. And teachers are not considered frontline workers. And actually, one of my big concerns is none of these vaccine trials have been tested for kids younger than 16. So kids won't be getting these vaccines until they're tested. So that's a lot of potential spreaders, as it were. How do we get these? That's an excellent question, Mr. Lambert. I'm not too sure about that. How to raise.
I have that meeting tomorrow night. I'm having a virtual meet and greet with immunization expert and the head medical director for the State Department of Public Health. And we can ask him that question because I think it's really important. And to your point, no vaccines, in theory, they're not planned, but the tools show kids eventually getting them. So I don't know what the process is for that. But also little kids especially don't seem to be spreading it to adults based on the bodies of research.
Let's hope.
What I heard from school teachers that are back in other counties is that they're giving it to each other. The teachers are giving it to each other because they're not always, the teacher that reached out to me said they're not always wearing their mask, like in the lounge and stuff. So, yes. So we will send a letter, Stan. Go ahead.
It is possible, we'll know tomorrow a schedule, and it is possible that the teachers go back before the beginning of next semester.
Right, because the semester starts mid-January this year, right?
Correct.
Finals are after the first of the year this year, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Stan, if they were doing in-person classes, would the school board be mandating masks for the students or just encouraging?
It seems logical that masks would be mandated. Yeah, I imagine masks will be mandated in the schools for quite some time, not to mention, one-way hallways and a number of things, especially at Dunwoody High School. This is going to be extremely challenging, even with minimal students.
Right. And I think I did hear her say that masks would be mandated when they came back.
Yeah. A number of
lots
like
of different things. And anybody else? Thank you, Stan, and thank you for your service to our community as our school board member the last few years. It is not an easy job, and we appreciate your service.
That's nice of you to say. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us tonight. Anybody else? I'll make sure you get the letter too. It'll go to the school board as well.
Yes, please. That'd be extremely helpful.
Thank you. Anybody else? So that concludes. I think if nobody else, if no one else has anything, we can move to the next discussion item. Sharon, Michael.
Lynn, on this, just to wrap like a little quick commentary in this section. It's too bad we couldn't do a holistic governmental statewide approach of how we handle, because you can go to a bar and it's packed with hundreds of people without masking, and it just all layers on. We're all interrelated, not working in a vacuum.
And on a call I was on this week, someone said, just because it's open doesn't mean it's a good idea. And I think there's some truth to that. So with that, I think we're probably ready for our next discussion item.
Yes, Mayor, number 24 is bicycle and pedestrian policies. Michael Smith.
Good evening. With the city council's focus on connectivity, the council's expressed an interest in developing a bicycle and pedestrian plan. When you look at plans that a common bicycle pedestrian plan that cities adopt, they really include two components. There's the infrastructure or the project recommendations, and then there's the policy recommendations. We've had a few discussions about some of the infrastructure, and a lot of our existing plans include a number of bicycle and sidewalk pedestrian recommendations. We have a sidewalk improvement plan. Back in September, I presented a bicycle proposed network of bicycle facilities throughout the city. And so tonight, kind of the other piece of that is talking about potential policy recommendations that would go into a bicycle and pedestrian plan. So in preparation for this discussion, staff reviewed a number of bike ped plans from several other cities and looked at the regional policy as developed by the Atlanta Regional Commission. And share my screen here, starting with the regional policy. Can everybody see that?
No, not yet.
Let me try that again. Okay. Not seeing it. Well, it's the display I was going to show is attached to the memo. It's the ARC's bike ped plan, which is called Walk, Bike, Thrive, and it's there in that plan. There's a regional framework of 5 strategies that they outline, and the focus. I won't go through every one of them, but they focus on investment in communities and activity centers. And you see this through ARC's investment in livable center, their livable centers initiative projects. And we've had a few of those, one, the Georgetown Gateway and the Dunwoody Village Parkway project. Their plan also emphasizes safety, equity, and access to transit. Those are things we factor in when we look at how to prioritize our sidewalks and our other alternative mode projects. The statement pursuing relentless incrementalism, what they mean by that is that when you have an opportunity to build a piece of infrastructure, a piece of sidewalk or a bike lane, that you do it even if it doesn't connect to anything else right away. You put it in where you can, and eventually it will all connect together. Our development code has that philosophy with where we require frontage improvements on individual development projects. And then lastly, ARC wants to lead the development of a regional trail system, and we've talked about and have plans for connecting to our neighbors. So I think when you look at the regional policy, Dunwoody has implemented policies that are consistent with that regional policy. And then when you compare our current policies to those in other cities' plans, as it's outlined in the memo there, we've already adopted many of the policies you would find in a typical plan. There's 9 policies and 5 action items listed there that are found in other plans that have some parallel in a policy or plan or action item that that Dunwoody has taken. One I will highlight is our complete street policy. That was the first action we took after adopting the first transportation plan in the city in 2011. And all complete street policies come with some type of language that says you'll consider all the modes of transportation that use that roadway when you're doing transportation projects. Dunwoody went a little bit further at the time and said when we're resurfacing on a bike route or a road designated as a bike route or bike facility in our transportation plan that will look at retrofitting bike lanes. And through that initiative, we've, over the last 9 years, implemented over 12 miles of bike lane in the city. So we've, that's been a successful policy that's been in place for a long time here. A few things that we found in our review that may warrant further discussion. One is explicitly allowing paved paths and transitional buffers. I mean, we have some language in our code about paths in transitional buffers, but it doesn't explicitly say that it can be in the buffer. I think that language, if that's something the council wants to do, I think that language could be clarified a little bit. Our code also requires sidewalks in all new development, with the exception of residential developments where you're not adding any new structures or you're not adding any new lots. So, you know, a tear down and rebuild does not require a sidewalk if there's not one there already. That may be something as the city council moves towards expanding the neighborhood sidewalk program, which is something that's been discussed previously. You know, maybe that's something you would want to change. So if a house is being rebuilt on one of those streets that where we're planning to put a sidewalk, that they would go ahead and put the sidewalk in. Bike share programs are mentioned in other plans. We've talked about that here. This, you know, that's something the CID has also discussed, and I think that's something to look at when the timing is right. We've been working to get more infrastructure in place so that a bike share program could be more or as successful as we would want it to be. And then finally, in a couple of other plans we reviewed, there was suggestion of integrating education programs into the schools. One of the cities that has that is the city of Decatur, where obviously the school system and the city are a little more closely aligned than they are in Dunwoody. So if that's something we want to do, it'd be a little more challenging probably with us, and we would probably need more staff resources and coordination with the school system to be able to implement something like that. I think I'll stop there and ask for any questions, or if we want to discuss. Those were the common things that we saw that we either already have or that we would maybe want to consider.
Okay, I'm gonna try to remember to turn to this way. Tom, anybody down there have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. I'll start. I'll start with, because I'll forget it, the education portion that you just mentioned. I do think that's an important factor, and I think that's something that we could do. And perhaps we can ease the burden on staff a little bit, because perhaps that's something that we can refer to the Sustainability Committee. Back on my days, way back in the infancy of the city when I served on the Sustainability Committee, that was actually something that an effort I led, was the education effort and the walk to school effort in the schools. So that just might be a suggestion there, where it wouldn't be a burden on staff, but we could still start working in that direction. Just some general comments on this. Michael, I know you know very well my stance on this is, and I want to do everything we can to increase the walkability and bikeability in the city. You know, we just went through our comprehensive plan review, and throughout that entire document, all the feedback, all the surveys, everything our residents are asking for, that is probably, if not at the top, right near the top of the list. It's a quality of life issue for the people that live here, being able to get around on foot or on bike, to visit their neighbors, to go to the store for recreation, connecting neighborhoods, connecting business districts. So I think this is a priority for the city, and I think it's level of priority. We addressed this in the connectivity issue part of this in our retreat at the beginning of the year, which seems like forever ago. But you know, I think if this is a priority for the city, it needs to be reflected in our policy as such. So I would like it to see us review our policy and see what we can do in those policy areas, that we can strengthen it and ensure that whenever we have the opportunity, that we are addressing these types of issues. Because I also think, in addition to quality of life, I think it's an economic development issue as well. Obviously, travel and tourism are down right now, but it will rebound, hopefully sooner rather than later. And when they do, having this infrastructure in place can help to help Dunwoody in becoming a destination. When I travel, that's one of the things that I look for, is if I'm able to get around conveniently on foot, not have to get in a car or take some sort of transit or Uber or anything like that. So I think it is an economic development issue. And I think when you look around and see other cities that have put the infrastructure in place, the impact it could have to a city's bottom line as well. So I would like to see that. And, I know I've pushed for, I know we have elements of this in policy kind of scattered around in our comprehensive plan and our transportation plan and the parks plan. But again, I strongly believe that we need to have all of that in one place, because it tends to kind of get lost in the shuffle if it's scattered all over the place, kind of like buckshot. And we need to put it in one place so it's clearly identifiable what our strategy is, so that we don't miss opportunities, so that when we do an intersection project or a road repaving project, that if our long-term vision is to have a multi-use trail, and I'll use Mount Vernon as an example, we're going to we have a plan to start from the Jet Ferry area, the Tilly Mill area, a 12-foot or a multi-use trail going across Mount Vernon. And it's a part of our comprehensive plan to connect our commercial centers. So connecting Jet Ferry to Dunwoody Village. But when we get to, the Vermac Manhasset intersection, a project we just did, it kind of chokes down. So we either have to choke down the trail, or we'd have to reinvest in redoing a project we just did. So that's really my push for having a master vision, so that when we have a project, that becomes a part of the planning process automatically, and is not an add-on or an afterthought. So, and that's not to be critical of anybody, because I know that wasn't in place, but that's why I think it's important to have that, because if not, that's our major east-west connector. And we have the Ashford Dunwoody Trail coming up, commuter trail as well. So how great would it be for those two to connect, right at the village, and you can get from east to west across our city on a multi-use trail. And that's the type of connectivity that I'm looking for. So anything we can do to get that a strong part of our policy, I'm in favor for. So I don't really have any questions, and I'll get off my soapbox. I'll pass it on to somebody else. Thank you.
Jim, go ahead.
I guess I question your characterization of it, because I don't think we missed an opportunity. I think that, we were trying things at the time that Vermac and Manhasset and Mount Vernon were designed, with the bicycle lanes, as part of the street. And what we found is it doesn't work. We've learned from experience, and we've adjusted our policies, and that's why we're moving forward with, not doing so much shared bike lanes, but going with the 12-foot multi-purpose trails on the arterials, which is why we're developing, right now, the planning for, from on Mount Vernon, from Tilly Mill down to Forest Springs, basically, which is a pretty good chunk. And again, we've got 12-foot multi-purpose trails happening in the Georgetown Gateway. We're not missing an opportunity there. I think we are, I think, moving forward in a lot of different areas, quite well. We've tweaked, as experience has shown, we need to tweak how we do it. But, I think as Michael's memo shows, we've got pretty much all the elements that any of our neighbors are doing. And it's really a question of, how much money do we have to throw at it, and when is it appropriate? It's difficult building in a built out environment. We aren't a greenfield suburb that can do all this stuff all at once as part of the initial development process. And, it takes time and a lot of effort and a lot of care, because, anytime you start cutting into existing landscaping and, people's yards, even if it's existing right of way, it's a political issue. And we're going to see that as we, finish out the sidewalks on the arterials and get to complete streets there as we look at some of these neighborhood sidewalks where, yeah, we need the sidewalks. You know, there's a lot of cut through traffic on some of the neighborhood streets. But the flip side is, man, you've got some really nice landscaping that people have built in along the right of way. And that's going to be, you know, a challenge, just as we saw on some of the school sidewalk efforts. So, you know, I think, you know, I'm okay with putting it all in one document. But I think we've been doing it as a, you know, a pretty good job of, you know, the line that I liked was the relentless incrementalism. We've been incrementally building out a lot of sidewalks, a lot of trail connectivity. You know, you got the bridge across the Nancy Creek tributary. You know, again, Georgetown Gateway trails, the Mount Vernon trails. You know, I think we're moving things along nicely.
Okay, Pam, anything? Okay, Joe?
I'll start off with a couple of quick questions. So, Michael, will you package and consolidate this into a single document? It could be referenced into our other policies and so on. But what I'm looking at is, you know, when I did IT consulting, you do knowledge transfer, you documentation, and you do knowledge transfer in case you leave. So, Michael, you've done a hell of a job, and I really, really thank everything you've done here. And you've single-handedly taken that complete streets policy and implemented it, okay? And hats off to you, kudos. So I want to make sure that we've got that in a one-stop shop. So no matter who shows up, we don't want you to leave, but are we going to create a single doc and just reference the other docs and so on? Is that what we're getting towards?
Yeah, the last point I was going to make is kind of about next steps and how we get there. So I think, you know, if that's what council wants to do, I think that's the answer to your question is yes. But I wanted to give you all a chance to give any feedback on some of these additional policy issues that, you know, could be, that we're not doing now, that could be added, or if anybody has strong opinions one way or the other on any of those.
Right. All right, I've got a few then specific ones. So you mentioned about that neighborhood sidewalk building out. What about alternative to, if they didn't want to have the sidewalk built to fund, just to have a fee to go into a fund for a sidewalk fund?
Yeah, we do have that ability in our code. We may have to revise the language a little bit, but that is something that's in our code.
So if we could look at that language, because that could provide flexibility there, that would be something to consider. So I'm going to hit a couple things. And you mentioned in the staff memo, not in the presentation, about the NACTO Urban Street Design Guide. So I'm a wonky, I understand that. I really do want to see that reference because it really talks about building the best facility, context sensitive, i.e. like we're looking at the Dunwoody Village, potentially along Chamblee Dunwoody, of doing separated facilities for bike and then a pedestrian. And then in the lesser, like Brook Run, we do the multi-use path. But will we put that saying somewhere in our policy saying, yeah, we do follow the NACTO? I know it'll be in an RFP, but I'd like to elevate that.
Yeah, we can discuss that in the final document or policy, you know, the final thing that deliverable that we put together, we can put that in there. Yeah. We, you know, as we've started referencing it explicitly in our RFPs, but we've also for a while referenced GDOT standards, which actually in GDOT standards, they list NACTO as one of the references there too. So, but we can call that out specifically.
Well, doesn't GDOT and AASHTO still say a 4-foot wide bike lane is the minimum width for a bike lane?
Yeah. So the AASHTO is the kind of legal policy framework that's recognized as kind of the law of the land. So when somebody's, you know, putting their engineering stamp on something, AASHTO is kind of the legal policy framework. NACTO is, I mean, they call them guidelines. They're really a supplement, I think, you know, to AASHTO. But, you know, if you're ever looking at something saying, what is the design standard? It's AASHTO, but NACTO is a guideline to make things more context sensitive.
Yeah, so I'd like to, because I think some cities even say they won't do a 4-foot, they'll do a 5-foot wide minimum bike lane if they're gonna do a bike lane versus a 4. But so definitely would love to see the NACTO just plop down in the dock. Let me just flip through a couple things. The bike share. I know there's other CIDs that have implemented bike share without having the bike facility. We can do offline and have a separate side meeting with our CID reps and folks of where they are in doing a bike share just as is today. Have we had any sidebar conversation?
Yeah, we've talked about that with them a few times. I mean, and we do have some bike share in perimeter that office buildings and different people have done themselves. And the market's changing too. I mean, when the first time bike share probably came up as a discussion item, it was more, something that the city or the CID would sponsor, and you would have docking stations. But as you know, over the last couple of years, the trend has been more to dockless, and so you don't have quite the infrastructure investment up front. It's more, if you want to go the dockless route, it's more of, are you going to welcome those companies in to deploy? So I think that's an ongoing conversation.
I think if we do get to that conversation, we definitely have to bring in the council on that and understand we don't want to have stuff thrown all over like they did in Atlanta with the scooters and all that stuff and being abandoned and throwing in creeks and all those things. We definitely don't want to have that happen here. What else? So let's see, programs, education. Tom mentioned sustainability committee. We also have our Parks and Recreation. We can do some programming with them. We can sit down with Brent and their staff potentially as well, and even with potentially in our police and our community outreach. So like they'll do some things. So I think we can get some synergies going in addition to community-based volunteers. So I think we can get a good 3 or 4 pronged approach here versus just saying city staff singularly. So I'd still love to keep that conversation going moving forward. And I'm sure a couple of folks sitting up here might want to be involved and help spark that as well, right? I got a couple more things quick. In the design, we're not going to write a whole design policy guide, and we sat down last week, Michael, about, like, for instance, when do we paint a stop bar down on the pavement if there's a stop sign? So do we have anywhere in this bike ped? This is not really bike ped now. I'm kind of expanded the scope, but it's design standards. Well, you talk about crosswalks. So kind of stop signs are kind of, if you have a crosswalk, you have a stop sign, you have a stop bar. Do we have that, or are we going to have that in a separate doc as well? You talk about crosswalks in here later.
Yeah, crosswalks is something when we wrap, that's one thing that we're going to come back with a policy to council on that would eventually become part of this bike ped plan.
Okay, if it's sort of related again, but it's semi-independent, but even the idea of where do we put in those stop bars and so on? You've got these residential streets that there's stop signs, and if you don't know where a stop sign is, you might be just looking and there's no, just adding that to have a little awareness of knowing when we paint this crosswalks and then the stop bars. I'd like to just kind of get an idea of it. And the last thing goes without saying is I totally support prioritization for this kind of work, for traffic calming, for bike ped projects when it comes to our capital improvement plan, when we budget, when we're going to do budgeting for 2021, if we have SPLOST dollars adjustments. So I really hope that that's tied in with our priorities that we reflect this year as well. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. So looking forward to seeing this and just packing us together. Thank you for everything you're doing, Michael.
John.
Thank you, Michael. There's been a lot of good discussion. I don't have a whole lot of issues other than what everybody else has raised. Joe started to mention a little bit about traffic calming, and we've had a number of emails lately regarding traffic calming, stop signs, stop signs being added to locations where maybe they're not at right now. And I guess the frustration of some of our residents not getting stop signs and not getting the approval for them is, I guess we're following best practices, or maybe you can just give me a few minutes on, how and why are certain signs allowed in certain places and where are they not? And is there anything we can do better to make our residents feel safer in their community?
Yeah, stop signs, there's specific criteria and there's a national standard for street signage and pavement marking, the manual and uniform traffic control devices, and stop signs. I think a lot of times when we get requests for stop signs, it's in response to a concern with speeding in a neighborhood or something like that. And I mean, in the manual on traffic control, it explicitly says that stop signs shouldn't be used for traffic calming, because the idea is that if you're trying to solve a speeding problem and you put in stop signs where people aren't expecting them or they're not warranted, then you create a stop sign problem. And we've seen this. We did some measurements a few years ago on North Peachtree Road in the 25-mile-an-hour end of North Peachtree, where we did the traffic calming. And we were seeing, even on weekends when you would presume that most of the traffic is neighborhood traffic, compliance with the stop signs under 30%. That's obviously not everybody blowing through it, but there was very few people that were actually coming to a complete stop at the stop signs. So we go by that criteria for where we can put them in and where we can't. And that's the basis of that.
All right, thank you.
That's fine.
Something Joe said made me think of just a quick comment. Michael, when we were doing all of the walk to school sidewalks to the south of Dunwoody Elementary in Village Mill, there were a few hiccups up front, but ultimately that was very successful with, people being happy with how Public Works eased those sidewalks into the existing landscaping and worked with our citizens and made it all happen. And if, I don't know if there's a lessons learned to be captured there, but whatever y'all did there, try to recreate the wheel and, set that down as an internal, this is how we ought to do it going forward, would be my 2 cents worth on easing sidewalks into existing neighborhoods as we're going to be faced with in upcoming years. Thanks.
Anybody else? Thank you, Michael.
I've one
Okay,
thing
go
to kind of wrap this up, and I'm going to try to share my screen again and see if this. All right, can y'all see it now?
Well, it's coming. Yes, now it works.
Okay, so the last point here was, we've talked about the bicycle facility recommendations earlier this year, and the feedback was that we need a roadmap or a prioritization of projects to kind of complete that task. We've talked in the past about the sidewalk improvement program and adding more neighborhood sidewalks. And the discussion in the past was we would probably want to adopt that as we get closer to the end of our current program. So maybe over the next year or so, that's something that we could finalize. Staff's going to put together a policy on where to add marked crosswalks and where we have marked crosswalks at intersections that don't have stop signs or signals, what kind of enhancements those crosswalks should get. And then any of these other policy preferences that have been discussed here tonight. And I think when we get to the end of that process, that's where we would package all of that up into a final bicycle and pedestrian plan. So that's kind of the roadmap that we're suggesting to get to where you want to go.
That sounds great to me. If you're looking for some consensus, I see heads nodding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Item number 23 is presentation of North DeKalb Cultural Arts Center Master Plan. Brent Walker.
Thank you, Sharon. The next agenda item is something that y'all have seen before. Y'all saw an early version at your retreat earlier this year. We had Sizemore Group come in and do multiple meetings with our Arts Center partners, all four, including the DeKalb County Library folks. Angel Kaufman and Bill Day St. Alban are here from Sizemore to talk a little bit more about that plan. As y'all know, COVID has had some impact on that facility and the usages of it, but we wanted to continue moving forward with the utilization study of what that facility could be in the future. We have had some, of course, some monetary loss from the Sproul Center for the Arts, the funds that they were going to use for the phase 1 build out. But the expectation is they will come back. We certainly want to be prepared for that. So Angel and Bill are here to present and open it up for discussion for this utilization plan. And I will turn it over to them at this time so they can start the presentation.
Thank you.
Bill, you're muted.
Thanks. I'm Bill D. St. Alban with Sizemore Group, and I have Angel Kaufman with Sizemore Group as well. She's a partner in the office, and I'm the CEO. And we're honored to do this study for you, and we'll walk you through it in a very executive high-level way since you've seen it before. So could Angel get control of the screen, and she's going to put up the PowerPoint? Or do you have it, Brent?
Angel was going to share it.
Okay.
Yeah, or I assume you're not seeing it then. Let me try this again.
Yeah. While she's doing that, I know oh, good.
There it's coming.
Right. Okay, we completed our work in December, so it's kind of this is all pre-COVID work, and it has been a dramatic impact to the arts community. We work with a lot of different arts communities and theaters, and it has been a dramatic year for that part of our economy. Next. Go ahead. Oh, there you go. So you all are familiar with this, the study area. You have combined 3 or 4 different programs, and I'm going to take you through an overview of our process, the goals that came from the end users and from the city, and the summary of future space needs, and then the preferred option, and then how we phase it, which I really think I heard tonight a lot, the term incremental, and that's really what we have developed as well for this site as an incremental approach. So we started with an analysis at a very kind of macro level, and that has 2 components to it. One is analyzing the existing buildings, what condition they are in, how much space do they have, and then analyzing the needs of all the different programs that are happening in there. And then we look and see if there's a gap, either you have too much space or not enough space, and you know, where are the needs if everybody was right sized and they grew over the next 10 years. And then we developed several options. You've looked at some of those and settled on one option. And we've developed a concept design for that option and how you can go about it incrementally. Next. So in setting the goals, we wanted to create, this is part of an arts district. It sits close to your, what's to be your downtown, your village center. It wanted to be open, friendly, and full of natural light. Wanted to have a, sorry, the faces were blocking the words. We wanted to have the arts be a cohesive and work in a creative synergy. We've seen a lot of these kind of facilities combined around the country, where you have library and arts all in the same site, and it creates in theater and visual arts, it creates a really good synergy, and it's kind of a one place to go, and it really is kind of an active hub. It was really kind of enlightening working on that space and how much goes on over there. And then you'd want to have some multi-purpose spaces and some dedicated spaces. And economically, you weren't looking to build a Taj Mahal, but a really solid facility. And actually, some of the existing structure is very solid. It's a little dated, but it was built at a time when things were built out of concrete, and it's a pretty, for a one-story building, it's almost a bomb shelter. And then the conceptual design went for, the needs went for 25 years, and then we included some strategies. Next. So the four major players out there is the Chattahoochee Handweavers Guild, the Dunwoody Library, Sproul Art Center, and Stage Door. And what you see to the right is our kind of analysis of their space needs, which the terracotta color being their current assignable square feet, the purple being if you brought that current need up to space standards. So they're, in some cases, when you walk through, they're really kind of operating on top of each other. Within their own groups, and then what their needs would be at 10 years. So you can kind of see Stage Door has a very big vision in 10 years. Next. And so from a square footage standpoint, you have about 42,000 square feet of assets on that site. And at build out in 10 years, it would be ideally at 88,000. None of this is tied to funding at this point. So next, that's just an ask. But we did do some comparisons at the request of the city manager with other cities of the same size and kind of right size that ask. So the preferred option was to put everybody on this site and to grow incrementally. And you see that from the different colors, Stage Door can pretty much expand where it is in the initial phases. Sproul already had, before we even started, they had a set of plans already done for initial phase. And the Dunwoody Library over time had some growth needs, but not drastic. And then parking's always a challenge. You just can't build buildings everywhere without looking at the parking. And I think this may have been the site that was talked about earlier today in terms of parking up against the residential. And I'll talk later when we get to the phasing about how we dealt with that. Next. So in the first phase, it's primarily, this is phase one, dealing with the Sproul Art Center. They have the most booming and revenue producing operation there, where they can generate funds themselves. Unfortunately, as Brent said, those funds have gone to maintain operations through COVID, but they do have a really bustling economic model to a certain extent. So I suspect that they'll recover and want to get back to this within a year. And so that was the first phase, is to grow that component of it, just that piece of it. Next.
Bill, did you want to talk about the access for this phase as well?
Why don't you talk about it? I know Brett and I had some big ideas about how to fix the access, but it happens more at the next phase. Okay. What am I missing here? All right, so over time, really, you have the really a poor traffic situation, and you have a lot of asphalt that really makes it a cantankerous environment in a lot of ways, ins and outs, and kind of confusing to use that site. So as Dunwoody begins to urbanize over time, and this becomes a district, well, we move towards more of a pedestrian focus and moving the buildings to the street and getting rid of the road that's out in front and moving the parking to either side. And I guess the big access point she's mentioning, go back one for a minute, Angel, see if we did it. Yeah, is a wraparound drive, and that would require moving the kiln that they have to the back. But that loop, it creates an alley that then connects everything, and you don't have to have the multiple curb cuts along the main drive, which is kind of dangerous in the way they operate. So that would simplify circulation on the site greatly and connect it all so you can get in and out from either side. Plus give you a lot more buildable land without losing a lot of parking. There's not a whole lot of parking up front. Next. So that the next phase we would get at Stage Door and the Chattahoochee Weavers Guild with some shared space. And so the parking in terms of the neighborhood, so this is probably a good 5-10 years out. In terms of the neighborhood, nothing has changed in terms of the deck is not needed. We did careful calculations at each one of these in times of use, and we did not see a need to put a deck in with these two additions. Next. Now the last phase, which is kind of the dream, is to build that new theater eventually, and that's when you'll require to build a deck. At that point, you can't surface park this site anymore. That's pretty far down the line. There isn't funds identified to do that at this point. But we're working in cities all over the region, and community theaters to major performing arts centers are definitely something everybody's looking at. You got to do a market study of what makes sense, and it's a small theater that probably makes sense here with some of the other big theaters being built. But also I want to address the parking comment. So we had showed the parking behind us, but when I actually looked through how we budgeted it and the topography, the site drops off about 20 feet on that side, so you can practically bury that parking. And then when I looked at what we recommended for a budget for this site, it actually covered doing underground parking, which it's expensive. It would require generating a lot of funds for this phase. But if you, there is funds to make this parking go away. If you've been to Sandy Springs Performing Arts Center and City Hall, the parking's all underneath. Very, very expensive option. So you're gonna have to weigh that. And there's certainly alternatives between that and putting a simple deck on the side that could also screen it. Alpharetta's built a deck as their phase one of a major downtown, and it was built to look just like a building. So there's ways to deal with that, and there's ways to screen the lighting. And I think the comments are good, and it's great that the neighborhood made those, because I think it's very important that, that those kind of issues be addressed as it gets developed. Next. Oh, in COVID, I've been doing a lot of sketches. And so this is probably maybe something new, but I try to look at a way to simplify what we're doing. And so this road you're seeing along the front is really just a big sidewalk. Could be part of your cycling plan. It's a big wide sidewalk that goes all the way along the front. And then you can come in and then build a series of simple boxes. I've done a lot of renovations and additions over time. And if you can build a simple building away from the existing footing, you can do something fairly economically. The other thing we've noticed in our planning work with cities is alleys are becoming very popular. So this is almost created like an arts alley. So as you add buildings on, you get an alley, and you can kind of tie all these arts community together along that spine that's called the alley gallery, and that would connect to the new art center eventually. And also, if you do these simple boxes and go incrementally, each could kind of have an identity and reflect whatever building or program. So if it's on the library, it may have artwork that relates to the library. If it's on the theater, it may have something that recalls theater. So, thanks. Which breaks down the styling of that building is kind of dated, kind of breaks down the scale of the site, and also puts it in a more urban kind of context. Any questions? And thanks again for allowing us to do the study.
Okay, I bet we have questions or comments. We'll start on Tom's end with his. You want me to go first? I don't care. Somebody else. Jim, go ahead.
I guess, looking at this, again, the parking and traffic concerns, there's not a lot of room for screening between that, the new back circulation alley and the neighbors. So that's a big concern. And then, I guess I see what you're doing with the deck. I was concerned about there's like you said, there's a big grade change from Womack up to, from the grade at Womack to say the library slab level, or the existing parking lot slab level. But I guess if you dig that out and that ramps up on the east side, and that kind of solves that problem, and then you ramp up and loop around to the left to get to the upper level, which is roughly where the existing grade is. That kind of works. So I guess that may not be a concern. I'm kind of blathering out loud and thinking it through. But again, I have a big concern with that back alley. I mean, I understand the problem you're trying to solve, but you're creating a problem for all those neighbors that this backs up to. All of a sudden, they've got vehicle traffic, and quite a lot of it actually. Given that, if you look at how much traffic goes in and out of the library every day, and would be using all of that, a lot of that would be running up and down right behind those neighbors that is simply not there today. So that's a big concern.
Yeah, if I could just piggyback on that comment too. We have an intersection improvement planned there at that particular intersection. And if memory serves me correctly, that plan calls for digging into that hillside a little bit and actually putting in a retaining wall of some sort. So I don't know that would be a viable place for an entrance, especially if that is to become a primary or only entrance and exit into the facility. So that's something that definitely, if we were to go anywhere with this plan, I think the first step would be to have a conversation with Michael Smith and find out, if that's even an option for the traffic. Because if memory serves me from our discussion on the intersection improvement, I don't believe that is an option for an entrance there. So that would be a concern. I do have a question on the costs. Because when I was looking at the costs of this, my first question is, as it's broken down through the phases, is that a cumulative cost or is that the cost for each phase? Because when you add them all together, that's a pretty hefty price tag. And I'm just kind of curious, is the costs that are listed, is that for each phase?
It's for each phase. I looked at it carefully to kind
So
of.
the total cost by my calculation was close to $60 million. Is that accurate?
That sounds
58.5 was actually the total I came up with. And
most of that's in the last phase, which is the parking deck and the performing arts center. So and then that really doesn't have an economic viable plan at this point. So you can probably cut that close to half until you find the funds. And that's one of the reasons we want to do it incrementally too, because it is a lot of money.
Yeah, I just like to comment. I mean, I support the arts. I'm in favor of having an arts center for the city. I don't know that if this is in our budget. We would certainly have to find a source of funding for this if we were to even consider this plan. And I know that a concern was raised by a resident earlier tonight. Just to put him at ease, at least for now, this is not a shovel-ready plan. This is just a kind of a concept long-term vision plan. So we are not in any way approving anything tonight to start building. And based on the scale of this, if we were to move forward with this plan, it would be a while out. And I'm getting some feedback here. I'm not sure why. I did it. What was my other question here? Again, I understand the reason for the phasing is so that so we're not disturbing the operations of the particular tenants or groups. As I read through this myself, it appears that we are doing an addition and expansion to the existing stage door theater, and then in phase 2, and then in phase 3, moving them from that and then building a new facility. Was that an accurate reading of how the plan is?
Well, no, they thought, and there's some truth to this, they could do a lot more if they had instructional space. So they gained space in that last phase, but they would not abandon space that was built for them previously.
Okay, so the current space that would be, and then in phase two, the additional space, that would just be used for, that would still be used for theater, but the main theater, I guess, performance area would be moved to the proposed new facility. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, that's the only questions I have for right now. Thank you.
Jim, did you have anything else?
Yeah, we've got this, option A, B, C at the end of the presentation that we didn't really go through that really takes the cost out the roof. And I'm, I guess I probably have a lot of comments, but the big one is I'm on the face of it, I'm really not in favor of trying to move the library down to the old Austin site. So, and looks like you agree with me. Yeah, I just don't think that's a good use for that piece of land. I think the library wants to be, in the village somewhere. If it moves out of its current site, that's okay, theoretically, but I think we would need to have to find a home for it in the village. But really, it wants to stay right here.
Pam?
Oh my, it's a, I think I love seeing the future and what could possibly happen, but I think first of all, financially, we can't do it. And number two, there's some issues with just how the spacing and who's going to actually utilize it. I think we're just too early for any of this. It's fun to plan, and I want to keep talking about it, but I don't know what to really go from here with when we don't have enough money to even do it. And I guess the frustrating part is we're doing the intersection. And I guess when we do the intersection, we'll then make this area work with the transportation plan inside the cultural arts building. But I don't think we can plan this with the intersection at the same time. Unless we have the funds, like the library. I think we've discussed this before in our retreats and other discussions, that the library will stay. And if we can do some small adjustments, for Sproul and the library, because they're alive right now, maybe we can discuss that without a large amount of building out. But I think that this is, sadly, it's just, it's too early and we don't have the money.
Go back to show phase one, Angel.
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's all phase
I
one.
hear you. I agree with everything Pam said. And was it just a couple weeks ago, we finally approved the Dunwoody Village plan with an asterisk, of course, footnote. And so this has got to be holistic to me. It's like, what's going to happen up in the village? It's all interrelated. Do we want to have this high density, or something happens over there? Keep this as is. I think this phased incrementalism, if Sproul wants to come in there and build in that courtyard or create a second story, and maybe we spruce up the streetscape and get that Chamblee-Dunwoody corridor going so it's comfortable to walk in and make it pedestrian friendly and, landscape and so on. I think those things would go a long ways. And then we got to go and fix everything north of Mount Vernon. There you go.
John?
This large scale redevelopment of the Sproul Arts Center with the library, the stage door, and possible parking is a pipe dream. It's a long time out. And when I saw the plan, I thought of the resident who's going to be looking right at that parking deck, and I wanted to make sure that the community there was aware. And I immediately then remembered, wait a second, we just approved the village. This is the village. Mm-hmm. This is part of the village plan in which we just approved. And you know what else we just approved? That when there's a parking deck within 200 feet of a single family resident, that it has to go through the SLUP process through us again. So we added that in. So we sort of protected the residents directly abutting this property, which show a parking deck on basically feet from the property line. So it all comes together. Long story short, big, huge scale redevelopment of that is I wish it could happen tomorrow. I just don't see the funds. And there's no library bond funding happening, or in that sense, there's no push to move the library anywhere else. Sproul may put a second floor, may go into the courtyard, and that'd be awesome. They get to grow a little bit, and the parking that we currently have works for them. So I think short term, I think we have an action plan to keep it and modify it and improve it where it is incrementally. But major redevelopment, I just don't see the funding for it.
Okay, so.
Lynn, can I ask?
Oh, I'm sorry, Stacy, I forgot.
That's okay. So, when I saw the parking back, John, I kind of was happy that we had added that into the village plan as well. And I know that was your idea to do the 200 feet. So, good job on the foresight on that. I saw Michael Smith is still on the line. So I wanted him to address the intersection, because I know somebody else had mentioned that he didn't want the access there. If he could address that real quickly so we can just get that question settled.
Are you talking about the driveway off of Womack?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, as I recall, there was the resident there next door maybe commented on that.
But I thought that you had said it wasn't a good place for that because of the intersection as well. Are we remembering that wrong?
I don't recall saying that. I can't remember. I think if it was not I think it's far enough away from the intersection. If it was not, you probably would need some supplemental access, not just that only being the one access point. But if it was one of a couple of access points, I think you could make it work.
Okay, unfortunately, yeah, only one of two. Okay, all right, thank you. Lynn, I'm good.
Okay, so to the plans creators, I have a couple of questions. I see Angel and I don't know where the other gentleman went, but it seems to me a couple things. It seems like we're trying to squeeze a lot on not a very big piece of property. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes, and particularly in phase 3.
Okay, but like if you go to where your completed project is,
yeah,
it seems like we're trying to squeeze a lot on a very small piece of property, and it's going to be very expensive. And at some point, I wonder if it isn't cheaper to start over somewhere else with at least one portion of this. I have very strong feelings about the location of the library. I think it's already not quite in the center of the city, and I don't want to move it to the northern end of the city like the old Austin property. I don't think that's necessarily appropriate for a public library, but I think that somehow, first of all, financially, this isn't even in the realm. So let's be clear that pre-COVID, it wasn't even in the realm. Post-COVID, yeah. And I have asked our various nonprofits to think about whether their mission is driving their growth or their growth is driving their mission. Because they don't have to meet the needs of every single potential consumer of their services to be successful. And so if the location is working for them and they can do some minor enhancements or not even so minor with the Sproul Center's initial plans that can make it work, and the city can, we've added the space at Sproul, at Shallowford, we call that building on Shallowford, the annex. Are there things we can do to support? So you brought Sandy Springs up. So Sandy Springs lost $3.5 million on their theater the first year, and the theaters don't make money. And so we can't build a facility unless we know that a group can support it. And so Brent, it feels like there's a lot more questions and answers, and your memo reads like you would like to put this on the agenda soon to be approved. But I'm not sure that this council's ready for that.
Sure, no, and all that was based on the discussion tonight, Mayor, and certainly if council is not comfortable with the direction of the plan, we won't go that direction. The intent was to have primarily phase one be considered as more of an option in the nearer future. Of course, COVID has kind of backed that up because Sproul had the funds to put towards phase one. Phase three, honestly, I talked with Tom, Councilman Lambert this afternoon. I said, hopefully my grandchildren could come and watch the first event in that facility, because I honestly don't see phase three happening in any timeline that makes sense for us right now or in the future for future council. So I would suggest that we look at it in terms of phase one, possibly phase two as a long-term option. But certainly if phase three is causing a lot of heartburn for the council and yourself, that we could eliminate that phase completely as an option. And that could be something a future council could consider. But I do think phase one and phase two could be an option in the next 10 years. Certainly phase one sooner than that, if Sproul is able to get their feet back under them and regenerate those funds that they've had to use to survive. But certainly try to keep it within the existing footprint for phase one and two and do those minor modifications that y'all have spoken about tonight. Michael Smith and I have actually even already spoken about reducing one of those entrances down, the second entrance north of the intersection, removing it as part of his intersection improvement plan. So there's definitely some things that are in phase one and two that y'all have mentioned tonight that I think are possible in the near future. So if y'all like to see us kind of dial this down to a workable plan over, say, a 10-year time frame that would include phase one and two, we can certainly do that.
I think that's reasonable. I think you need to take some time. I don't think there's a real rush unless you feel like there's a rush. I want to be careful because one of the risks of putting a plan out there that's not particularly doable is that work ceases to happen on plans that might be doable. And so I don't want to give any organization false hope. I don't want to mislead residents about what might be coming. And also, I think there's too much in this footprint to do what this plan is, even if we had $100 million. This isn't where I'd want to put everything they've put on. I understand they were looking how to maintain the status quo of who's there, but I think that's also a discussion we need to have. And I don't want to give out false illusions.
Sure, that makes sense.
So, yeah, so scale it back, I think, is somewhat of the consensus. Let us talk about phase one on its own and maybe phase two. But that, I think, is the next step.
Okay. And certainly part of this exercise was to determine what to do with the Austin school site, which is one reason why we brought it to you at the retreat. And it did satisfy that. Y'all did give us direction on that building and what was to be it, which is, it no longer exists. So the exercise was primarily not just for this location, but to also satisfy what to do with the Austin school building. So just through the process of doing this exercise, it gave us that answer.
Absolutely. And I also want to point out that if you were a private developer, you would have had to notify the neighbors and have a meeting. And so I think it is somewhat appropriate for us as a city to consider that as well before you bring it back to us, perhaps. And I know it's hard, but we can do Zoom. It's actually easier to have meetings now. So, you know, just to give feedback, but I do think that we can't, I wouldn't support approving this whole plan the way it is, even if the intention is only to do phase one right now because of the long-term implications of having this on the books.
Okay.
But I appreciate, and I know everyone on council appreciates all the efforts that went into this and all the time. And we look forward to working together to get the first phase correct. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The last item under discussion items is CARES funding update. Jay Benicki.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Let me share my screen for a second. Can you see the chart that's on the screen now? Can you see the chart?
Yes, we can see it, Jay.
What you've got here is this is the budget that the council updated last meeting, and we just want to talk a little bit about it to get some more guidance on and some discussion about things that are up and coming. To go through some of the categories that are pretty obvious and the like. The hazard pay here is an estimate for what we think we will have spent by the end of the year on this. So that pretty much has all been obligated. This evening, you approved the $100,000 for the tourism reopening. So that transaction will happen as soon as we can get the memorandum inked between the two entities. Out of the not-for-profit grants, to give you an update of where we stand on that, 5 of the 8 entities have submitted at least partial reimbursements. 2 of them have submitted total reimbursements. And so we've obligated just a little bit around 160,000 of that. Right now it's going through a good process with each of the agencies. We're working out some of the issues with verification and stuff, but all have been a pleasure to work with. And it's getting, each step we go along is doing good. Out of city supplies and services, the city has spent probably about a third of that right now, around 350,000 or so. A great deal of it has been with upgrading technology things. We're working on plans to obligate the rest over the course of the end of this year and the beginning of next. The al fresco grants you have here, those applications have started to come in. They're smaller, and we're working with both economic development and community development are taking the lead in passing those through, and we expect to obligate some of that in the next week or so. The last part of here is the small business grants, of which currently there's a budget of $1 million, but it also brings up the fact that the council has reserved over $2 million of this as a contingency based upon the demand of that. That's kind of the current overview. Are there any questions on that before we get into 2 specific topics, and that's not-for-profit grants and the small business grants?
No.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay, none.
Okay. We'll move first to the not-for-profit grants. We do have, as I said, 2 of the agencies have hit the $50,000 maximum reimbursement of what they were allowed. There is availability in the contingency if there would be impetus with the council to go ahead and up these. Since we've already vetted them and awarded them, it would take another council vote on it, but possibly at the January meeting, or if any agencies are willing or have the demand for services, we could look back at expanding them from, say, 50 to 75 or 50 to 100, provided they still have the need with it. Again, we'd want the agency itself to say that there is the need for it and council to ratify the approval. So just like to bring that up as a discussion, or what the council thinks at this time on that.
Oh, so it's my recommendation that we come back in January with a certain amount of money, no more than $400,000, to be used mostly targeted for eviction and eviction prevention. So for the agencies that are doing housing related services and utilities, but we will know more in January. And also by January, hopefully we will have a sense of what the small business grants are going. And so we'll know a little more about our contingency, but I'd like to, if we have funds that we can comfortably increase the amount, I'd like to target for housing, to prevent housing loss in January. So we'll come back with that. Is that okay, Jay?
It just so that it's on everybody's mind just as we go through it. The second one, and I'll need Michael Starling to help me with this, is an update on where we stand with the small business grants portion of this.
Yep. So Jacobs, who is our partner with that, they have finished the online portal. That website is going to go live on Wednesday. It will be alive 3 or 4 days. It will have all the information for the small businesses, the kind of documents they'll need, the processes they'll go through. And then next Monday, the 21st, the applications will be open. The portal will be open until we run out of money. We will get a daily list of who's applying, where they are in the process. So we should we should get a very good idea after the first couple of weeks of where we stand with that $1 million. We're pretty sure that we're going to go quickly out of that, but we will see. So we should be able to give you some updates weekly on where that stands. But the portal will go live on Wednesday and the applications will be ready to go next Monday.
So let me ask you a quick question, because we're much later in the process than in the calendar than I had hoped we would be with this. If you go through that first million in the first week, do we have to wait till January to authorize more funds?
Mayor, we could actually, that'd be very easy to call a special called meeting for a
Right.
budget.
So council, would that be okay if we want, because we have that 2 point something million in contingency. So we will just call a special called meeting if we go through it, because I hate to make people wait a month for a meeting. So, okay.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Quick. We can totally do it virtually. Yep. Okay. And you'll email us whatever the media press release, however we're notifying the public that this is available.
Yeah, Jennifer's working on that now. So we will hit a big splash on Wednesday when it's live. We'll let you know. The chamber will be behind it. And we wanted to give everybody a few days before the application is done, because this is a first come, first serve. So we wanted everybody to know exactly the documents they needed before the application was ready. So
okay,
we will inundate people with when it's ready to go.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have questions for them? John has a question.
Just a quick question. I wanted to make sure that there's no funds that we are on a deadline to spend by a certain date, that there's nothing expiring in the funding, that we are not on track to spend.
That's a good question. And to let Mayor and Council know, when we set up CARES 1 and CARES 2, since our police services budget fell under the criteria of the Department of Treasury, all of the police pay that was eligible, plus some of the hazard pay was in there, was eligible for it. So all of that funding should be obligated before the end of the year.
And that was the one that was expiring, correct, Jay? There was something that was expiring somewhere.
That is correct. And the terminology I tend to use is CARES 1, which is the money that we receive from DeKalb County. We will use for reimbursement, and then we're transferring that same amount to CARES 2 to kind of put it in a lockbox for purposes related to CARES, but it's technically at that point general fund city money.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment and just say, we heard a little bit earlier when Bill Baker told us about, like we're one of the few cities that is doing this and supporting our businesses and how important it is. I've spoken to some restaurant owners and local businesses recently, and they greatly appreciate what we're doing to help support them. And I think, I just think it's a very wise use of this money. Anything we can do to support our local businesses, as we've talked about, hopefully having more money to put towards this, I'll be in full support of. I kind of agree with what Michael said. I think this money is going to go fast once the applications are up, because there are a lot of businesses out there that are struggling. And so I'm proud of our city for doing this, and I hope that we'll have the ability to do more in the very near future. So thank you, Michael, and everyone else that's worked on this. I think this is a great thing we're doing.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Stacey? Okay. All right. Thank y'all.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, public comments. Ginger, can you check to see online, please?
Yes, I do show one person with their hand raised. Lauren Townsend, you should be able to unmute. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Lauren Townsend, and I'm sure several of you received an email from me this week, and I would like to personally thank Councilman Hennigan and Mayor Deutsch for reaching out and hearing what I had to say and what my concerns were. I 100% understand that as representatives of the city of Dunwoody, that you have no control over what DeKalb County School District can do as far as our children but it's been very frustrating, as I'm sure many of you know. And I think that a lot of us feel as your constituents and as residents that we need you all as the people we voted for to advocate for us, because your voices are louder than ours, because you represent so many of us. And, I'm not tone deaf. I know that we are in a surge. I know that we are peaking as far as COVID goes, and schools that have been face-to-face for months now are now shutting down. Today, we saw that DeKalb County School District released a plan, and tomorrow we are hopeful that they release actual dates for people to have a choice to go face-to-face. But the reality is that they have moved the goalpost on us this whole time. So what we need from you all is to, if you feel like you agree that we should have the option for face-to-face, that we should have a plan for face-to-face. No one thinks that it has to happen right now, but we do need measurables. We need a rubric. We need to know that DeKalb is not going to continue to move that target for us. And secondary, as you just spoke about the CARES Act and the money, DeKalb County School District was allocated $33 million in CARES Act money, and they're now asking us for $2,000 for an open records report just to find out what that budget is, on how they're going to spend that money. It's
30
extremely
seconds remaining.
it's extremely frustrating as a taxpayer and as a parent to know that they've had 9 months to equip our buildings and our teachers and our facilities, and we don't know what's happening on a daily basis. So my ask is that you continue to join us in demanding to know what's being done on a daily basis to protect our children and our staff and our teachers, to get them ready for face-to-face learning. That's it. I appreciate you all, and that's it.
Thank you.
I do not see any other hands raised at this time.
All right. Okay, council comments. We'll start. Oh, city manager comments. Thank you. Eric?
Mayor, thank you. I'll go over the report the past couple of weeks, and then I'll send it out to you shortly. Public Works, we have a lot of activity in that area with the Peeler Road sidewalk, the Tilly Mill sidewalk, and the North Shallowford path all underway there. We also have the within the police department, the Christmas for Kids drive-through event was held and served over 50 needy children in the area. Also, as you read the report, you'll see the latest on our crime stats, but also what we want to continue to point out the LPR, the license plate reader cameras, and the success that we're having with those devices. We had our kickoff for the holiday lights at Brook Run Park on Saturday, and that runs from the 12th through the 28th of December. Also, the new park signage has begun, and the court surface at Waterford Tennis has been installed. We're waiting to paint that. Hopefully it'll be done this week, weather permitting. The community development, just some quick numbers there. 136 building inspections were completed over the past 2 weeks, and that included 45 new permits. Also, code enforcement has been very active on sign removal in the right-of-way, removing approximately 57 signs. We did hit a little bit on the CARES funding tonight, but also, excuse me, the small business assistant grant, alfresco matching grant, entrepreneur program, and tourism marketing campaigns are all part of our economic development CARES portion of our program. In the finance section of the reports, you'll see the monthly report for October. There's a link to that for you to see. Municipal court, over the past 2 weeks, we've disposed of 120 cases. 25 have been reset. In the new year, the department will no longer have court on Tuesday because we're caught up, which is a great thing from the COVID backup.
court staff. I can't say enough good things about them, along with the judges and our solicitor have all worked hard to get those cases caught up. So I want to do a shout out for Narwandra and her staff for getting that caught up. But with that, council, this being the final meeting of the year, I want to thank you on behalf of the city manager's office and the staff for your leadership and guidance through COVID and all the job and the hard work you do for the citizens of Dunwoody. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, council comments. John?
No comment.
Joe?
I'll try to keep it brief. Look, you see that, ma'am, how it started? How is it going? Is that 2020 with the dumpster trash in a fire? So look, this is my first year on council. So look, we started off with this 2020 event, but we've all done a lot of things. We've had personal stress, but I think we've moving forward. We're still moving forward. I want to focus on strategic goals and objectives moving forward, planning, making sure we're executing that plan, strategic plans, and so on. You think about a sense of place and look at what's happened at Brook Run. Sunday, my wife, Kathleen, and I went out for a walk on Brook Run. We went around 3 times, 6 miles. It was great. There were kids, girls playing out in the soccer fields. There were people, just walking and engaging, the dog park, all those little fields, everything was doing, playing Nerf ball games. It was just activated. The park was fun. They were playing baseball over there. And then with the lighting that Brent and friends put up there, there's a little, looks like a farm with a little, the little deer. There was a woman taking a selfie, a 40-ish-year-old woman taking a selfie by herself in front of those deer. And you know what that means? A sense of place. They're like, hey, check this out, tag it, you're in Dunwoody. And so that right there, look at what we've done from 10 years ago to now, whenever, from cityhood, incremental investment. So I'm focusing on, I've got 3 more years on this term. Boy, a year went fast. And I'm really focusing on that 36 more months of doing things, getting things done, and focusing on the village and investing and being that strategic partner. And thank you all. It's been a great first year.
Pam?
Just happy holidays to everybody. Stay safe and healthy and enjoy your loved ones near and far on Zoom or however, but stay safe. And also thank you, staff, City of Dunwoody, our Dunwoody Police Department. You all have done an amazing job here in this crazy 2020, and let's get out of it, and Happy New Year.
Jim? Right. Tom?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, pretty much like Jim said, just thank you everyone on staff. It's been a crazy year. There's no doubt. That's been said a million times. But the way so many people here have just reacted and gone above and beyond to do the best with the cards we were dealt. I do appreciate everything they've done. And yeah, 2021, get here as fast as you can.
Lynn, can I say something real quick?
Yes, Stacy, I was coming to you. I wasn't forgetting you.
I just echo everything everybody else has said. I also just want to give a special shout out to Ginger in the IT department. I'm pretty sure that when 2020 started, she had no idea she was going to be an expert in running hybrid meetings, but it's gotten smoother and smoother and smoother. So thank you for that. And thank you to all the city staff and everything you guys have done. Happy holidays to everyone.
Ditto that. At the beginning of the year for one of the local papers, I wrote here are my priorities for the year. And the first line was, Dunwoody's opportunities abound and 2020 promises to be an exciting year. Right. This wasn't the excitement I anticipated. But like everyone here has said, I am very grateful to our staff and to council especially. And it's quite remarkable when you think where we were in March and how we have finished the year now with the village plan with an asterisk and an arts plan, an ordinance adopted, and the directional signs adopted, and lots of other, we kept the city going. There are places that shut down zoning, they shut down everything, and we didn't. And I am grateful to the police department who never had the option of shutting down, and to our residents for continuing to work hard at supporting our local businesses, and to the staff here for tactfully telling me no with every other crazy idea I have. And we're going to come out of it. So that's the upside of all this. But we have really accomplished. When I sat down today to start writing stuff for the beginning of the year and to start listing what we've done, we got the parks done. We've done a lot, and I'm grateful for everyone's support. We have kept the city running. And here's to an easier 2021. I'm never going to use the word exciting again. And with that,
Move to adjourn.
moved by Jim, second by Pam. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, I don't think so. Sharon, that was unanimous. Thank you all. And good night. Thank you.